professor of pharmacy at Hogwarts. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 176, Understanding Aberforth. That bad boy went to the Wizengamot with Dumbledore. Alexis nodded. Sirius Black went to the Wizengamot for one reason only, and that was because the case against him was about to be overturned. Ever since he was wrongly accused of being a leaker 11 years ago, Sirius has been labeled as a traitor to his friends. Alexis tried to help him clear his bad reputation before, but failed that time. Will it work this time? Alexis suddenly felt worried. No, don't worry. Aberforth saw Alexis worry and comforted him with a big tongue. The bad boy's a good boy. Those people are just like Dumbledore. Their heads are full of slugs. If you say that, I'll be even more worried. Alexis looked at Aberforth speechlessly, and Aberforth was still talking about his mental journey during this period. He was really frightened when he heard that Alexis was seriously injured and unconscious. Aberforth is the younger brother of Albus Dumbledore. He knows what Dumbledore is thinking so well that he can even guarantee that he knows him better than Dumbledore himself. This is why Aberforth was so angry that he even refused to let Dumbledore enter Alexis' hospital room during her coma. In his opinion, Dumbledore always likes to complicate things, and he is good at turning good things into bad things. Originally, Alexis grew up happily, making money and traveling around happily. Wouldn't that be great? You have to force him into this just because of your damn ideas. Looking at Alexis lying on the hospital bed, the angry Aberforth thought of what happened in Godric's Hollow 92 years ago. At that time, he was like now, he could only watch his sister die, but there was nothing he could do. This is all Dumbledore's fault. 92 years have passed, and Dumbledore is still like this. It was he who allowed the tragedy to happen again. And this time, it was even more extreme than 92 years ago. At least at that time, he still had a portrait of his sister, but Alexis had nothing. Fortunately, Alexis came forward later, otherwise Aberforth felt that he might really kill Dumbledore. Little guy, that bastard is just using you. The long narration made Aberforth drowsy. He had drunk a lot of wine, but now that he was drunk, he was no longer just tipsy. But he persisted, mumbling vaguely, "Don't listen to him, Alexis, don't listen to him. He is using you to satisfy his own selfish desires." I know. Alexis took good care of the drunk Aberforth. He skillfully helped Aberforth up, put him on the bed, and then took out the quilt to cover him. "No, you have to go." Aberforth, who originally thought he was asleep, suddenly shouted, grabbed Horcruxes' hand, and shouted with his eyes closed, "You need to leave Hogwarts. Get away from that old bastard. He's just a bastard." Scolding Dumbledore was a good way to vent his anger, at least for Aberforth, so the rest of the drunken talk turned into a variety of unpleasant and harmonious words. Alexis sat on the bedside with a wry smile, waiting for Aberforth's voice to fade away and finally turn into a snoring. Then he took out his arm and turned around to leave. He had seen Aberforth like this several times. In fact, with Aberforth's drinking capacity, ordinary drinks could not make him drunk to this extent point, unless he has something on his mind. Alexis sighed, greeted the guests in the bar, and left the Pig's Head bar. The cold wind outside blew by, bringing an icy chill, which made Alexis' mind clearer. Just now in the bar, the air was so hot that he became drowsy. Now that he woke up and thought about what Aberforth said, it seemed very meaningful. He said Dumbledore was using him for some purpose. But that was what Aberforth said after all, and he said it while drunk, so the credibility was not high. Alexis thought for a moment, shook her head, and prepared to return to Hogwarts. When Lay arrived at the entrance of the village, a figure walked towards him, looking familiar. At this time, the sky was getting dark, and it was really difficult to see clearly from a distance. Alexis stood there and prepared to make a good identification point, but the person walking towards him started running, then threw himself into his arms and hugged him hard. A fresh smell. Alexis. Great. Thank God. You're finally back. Familiar voice. The neat short hair, the face that is not stunning at first glance, but the more you look at it, the familiar smile. It turned out to be Christy. Christy, why are you here? As soon as Alexis opened her mouth, it immediately destroyed the atmosphere of the scene. There was a brief silence in the air, and even the cold wind had no idea when it would bypass the two people. Christy let go of Alexis and said with a smile, I have been living here since I resigned from the Aura department. Do you have relatives living in Hogsmeade? Christy shook her head. This made Alexis a little confused. If he wasn't going to join his relatives, why would he choose Hogsmeade? To be fair, Hogsmeade doesn't really have much to commend it except for being adjacent to Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Maybe this is one of the few pure wizard villages? Close to, remote, backward, conservative. Alexis could count a lot of the bad things about Hogsmeade just by thinking about it. He bought a house here just because it was adjacent to Hogwarts. In fact, he has never lived in that house since he bought it. This question really left Christy speechless. She didn't know how to answer Alexis, so she could only find an excuse to excuse him by saying, I'm going on vacation, take some rest, and you guys are all here. I have known Alexis for more than 10 years. She has confessed her love to Alexis since she was a student. Later, with the help of Sirius and the others, she also expressed her love to Alexis openly or secretly, but Alexis seemed to it's like all the talents are added to the magic spell, so he is quite slow to react to these things. She still remembers the scene of her first confession point. It was before the Halloween dance. She prepared for a long time, even secretly bribed James and others, and finally mustered up the courage to confess her love to Alexis. She had even thought of the name of their grandson, but all she got in exchange was what and a confused look on his face. She was covered up then. When he came to his senses, Alexis was gone. For Alexis, repotting mandrakes is not as fun as dancing. Chapter 177, Ring and Locket. I bought a house here. Do you want to come and sit at home? Alexis looked up at the sky, looking troubled. No, it's already so late. I still have to go back and take care of the laboratory. Unable to resist the hospitality, Alexis finally went to her house with Christy. As they walked on the road, Alexis felt more and more familiar. When the two finally stood at the door, Alexis came back to his senses. Isn't this the neighbor of the house he bought? Alexis glanced next door, which was dark. When did Blake leave? Alexis opened the door and invited Alexis in. After thinking about it for a moment, he shook his head. It seems to have been a few days ago. By the way, before he left, let me give this to you. Christy turned on the light, opened a piece of floorboard, and took out a small cloth bag. Alexis took it and opened it. Inside was a ring. This ring did not look gorgeous, with a dull surface. Only the black gemstone engraved with the Peveril crest was inlaid on it, exuding the charm of time. Dark light. This is a ring with a rich history. Marvalo Gaunt's ring. One of Voldemort's Horcruxes. Alexis's eyes lit up. In addition to the ring, there is also a letter in the cloth bag. I found this from a Death Eater in the cemetery that day. It should be the ring of Marvalo Gaunt you mentioned, right? Counting the diary, we have found 2 Horcruxes. If including the golden cup you mentioned that is hidden in the Gringotts vault, we already have 3. Please don't be excited, your esteemed 3rd generation Dark Lord. I would like to ask your most honest and reliable friend, Sirius Black, to introduce you to the Locket of Salazar Slytherin. A solemn reminder, please don't get excited. I already have information about the locket, which is said to have been stolen by Regulus. I think I should find it soon. But I have to take care of my business first. When I come back, as a sinless person, I will bring back the locket. Your friend, Padfoot Sirius Black. At the end of the letter, there was a drawing that looked like a mess to outsiders, but Alexis knew it very well, and even when she saw it, Alexis couldn't help but laugh. That was their symbol. Apart from the 4 of them, not even Lily knew about it. Alexis put the letter and ring away, solemnly thanked Christy, and said goodbye. I'm leaving. Alexis said, what's wrong? Did something happen? At this time, Christy had just come out of the kitchen with a teacup. No. Alexis shook her head. It's a letter from Blake. I have to go back and prepare it. Thank you, Christy. After saying that, Alexis ignored Christy, who looked disappointed, turned around, opened the door and left. He didn't know how Christy was feeling at this time, but he was in a good mood anyway. He started counting on his fingers. He now holds Tom Riddle's diary and Marvalo Gaunt's ring, and will soon have Slytherin's locket. He has obtained 3 of the 7 Horcruxes, and Voldemort's own soul was killed by him. If he wants to be resurrected, he can only rely on the other 4 Horcruxes. Of course, this is not the happiest thing for him. He can defeat Voldemort once, and he can defeat him a second time, a third time. As long as people have failed, they will get used to it. What really made him happy was what he felt from the letter, Blake's expectation that he would soon be rid of the stigma he carried. Maybe soon, they will be able to be as scared as ever wherever they go. Alexis Grindelwald returned to Hogwarts happily. At just the right time, Harry and his friends just appeared at the other end of the corridor. To his surprise, in addition to Ron and Hermione, Malfoy was also following behind. Although Master Malfoy still seems to be out of touch, this is at least a good sign. Alexis stood at the door and waited for them for a while. It wasn't until all 4 of them entered the office that Alexis closed the office door. Mr. Alexis. Ron couldn't hold back his excitement as soon as he entered the door. We have all heard about it. You are simply amazing. Alexis smiled, and instead of letting them sit down in the office as usual, he led the 4 people to the laboratory. There are a few sets of clothes over there. Hurry up and change into them. Alexis pointed to the wardrobe that was wide enough for one person and ordered. Although he was away from school, the little animals in the laboratory were taken care of by house elves, but all they could do was to ensure that the little animals did not die, and his observation records had already been lost. This is not homework, and he naturally does not need to spend time and energy to make up for it, but this gap will also have an impact on his observation and research. There are many kinds of animals in Alexis's laboratory, including toads, rabbits, snakes, fish, earthworms, although there are no rare animals. He originally planned to select these representative animals for research, and then gradually expand the categories, look for commonalities, and then build a system. In any case, there are too many types of animals and magical animals in the wizarding world, many of which are very rare, and it is impossible for him to study them one by one. Starting from simple and common categories, building a system, looking for commonalities, and then extending it to all. This is the simplest and most efficient way. As for some special categories, they can be added after the system is completed. Moreover, after his initial version is published, there will definitely be interested people who continue to study along his ideas. When the number of this group of people grows to a certain extent, sooner or later all animal species will be studied. This group of people is also easy to find, such as the current junior wizards at Hogwarts. They have great potential. Ron, you and Hermione work together and fill them with food and water. The food is in the cabinet under the operating table. Fraxis pointed at Ron and Hermione. The quantities and precautions are next to the incubator. It's hanging. Remember to observe carefully and record their eating and excretion situations in the observation record. Malfoy, you go with Harry. After assigning the work, Alexis himself started to move. Different from their work, Alexis put on gloves, took out a rabbit from the alley, held it and brought it to the corner inside. This place is isolated, the space is completely sealed, and it is arranged like a small operating room. Alexis walked into the cubicle, closed the door, and injected an injection of anesthesia into the rabbit. The anesthetic quickly took effect. The little rabbit was lying on the operating table, with its 4 legs facing the sky, bouncing gently. Alexis picked up the scalpel and approached the rabbit with concentration. Fortunately, the compartment was not transparent. The 4 little guys outside were still chattering and had no idea about the bloody events happening inside. I've always wanted to raise a rabbit, but my parents didn't agree. It was Hermione's voice. At this time, she had just finished feeding the rabbits and was bending down outside the incubator, watching the rabbits eat. It's so fluffy and so cute. She admired. Well, it must be delicious. Ron, who was in charge of recording, whispered. Chapter 178, Where is the rabbit? That's how it is. Alexis had already dissected and recorded the tissue, and later he would test the various tissues contributed by the rabbit for medicinal purposes. But before that, he didn't forget the purpose of calling Harry. After all four people had finished recording, he briefly told about Azkaban and the cemetery and comforted Harry. Compared to the exclamations and admirations that the other three people often gave out, Harry's performance was relatively calm. After all, he had experienced all this personally. Alexis thought this might have some kind of psychological impact on Harry, and that's why they had this conversation. While traveling around the world, he met a guy who claimed to be a psychology expert. Alexis learned from this expert that people's behavior when they grow up is often limited by their childhood experiences. Many seemingly an inconspicuous childhood experience is likely to affect his life. Alexis didn't know if this statement made sense, but according to the expert, he followed and observed hundreds of people and came to this conclusion. In addition, the expert even used connections to enter juvenile detention centers. We have conducted investigations on the prisoners in the prison for serious criminals. Let's assume that the expert's conclusion makes sense. Of course, Alexis called them over. In addition to talking about killing Voldemort, he would also talk about the idea of studying animals. Pharmacy will soon be included in the examination. Maybe the 5th, 6th and 7th graders can't catch up, but the 4 in front of them will definitely catch up. It is impossible for him to give up on the exam just because he is familiar with it. On the contrary, because he is familiar with it, he may be more demanding. Since I don't know how to let go, I can only teach more in peacetime. His research on animals has just begun, and it is a good time to take them with him, influence them subtly, and let them have a deeper understanding of this subject. Okay, that's enough about this matter. Let's talk about the observation records just now. Alexis led the 4 people to start checking the observation records. He pointed out the highlights and shortcomings of each observation record one by one and guided them to record it again. The whole process was relaxing and enjoyable. But why does Hermione, a top student, seem to be a little absent-minded? What does it mean that she keeps staring at him? Do you still look into the anatomy room from time to time? This is a Dutch lop-eared rabbit. There are also Chinese white rabbits and Angora rabbits over there. Although they all belong to the Leporidae family, they are different in appearance and habits. Alexis said, pointing to the rabbit in the incubator. These are 2 Dutch lop-eared rabbits. Their ears are not long and droop back. The fur of the whole rabbit is slightly longer. They look very cute. Their responses to the stimulus are not fully captured in the observation logs. As he spoke, Alexis turned on the light switch. As the bright light shone, the Dutch lop rabbit jumped up as if frightened, went to the corner and huddled up, shivering. After Fraxus observed carefully, he turned off the light and looked at Hermione. Hermione was staring at the 2 lop-eared rabbits with a distressed look on her face. Hermione! Alexis yelled. Hermione didn't respond. Miss Granger! Alexis raised her voice slightly. Ron on the side poked Hermione, and then Hermione reacted, reluctantly looking away from the lop-eared rabbit, and drove towards the Horcruxes, with a puzzled look on her face. Refill the observation record. Alexis threw the observation notes to Hermione and continued walking. Next to the Netherlands lop rabbit is the Angora rabbit. The ears of this kind of rabbit are shorter than those of Holland lop rabbits, and the whole rabbit's hair is fluffy, like a snowball. Valley. It's just that there is only one rabbit lying alone in the alley. The other one is in the dissecting room, already reduced to a pile of parts. Alexis picked up the observation record and flipped through it. There was no stimulus response record at all. Who filled this in? Ron subconsciously glanced at Hermione, who was walking over with the observation records of Dutch lop rabbits. Hermione? Fill this one out again. He felt that Hermione's performance today was very strange and could be said to be completely substandard. With Hermione's intelligence, she shouldn't have made so many mistakes. Abandoning the observation notes, Alexis continued her inspection. After checking everything, Alexis called the 4 people in front of him. From now on, you have to come over every other day to make observations and records. According to the assignment just now, work in pairs. I will give you the key later. After hearing this, the 4 people had different expressions. Hermione was naturally happy, as this was equivalent to fulfilling her wish to raise rabbits. Harry and the other 3 boys were not so happy. Although they also think the little rabbit is cute, the process of observing and recording is boring. Besides, there are also less cute little things like toads, snakes, and earthworms. Alexis thought of a problem during this process and asked ourselves to help take care of them. Although these animals would not die, his research would also be lost. This reminded him of the various clubs in Hogwarts. Maybe he should form a club and select a few outstanding students to be assistants to help him complete these trivial tasks. In addition to observing and recording, he is already preparing to start more in-depth research. In addition, he also has to pay attention to the situation outside. He never knows when his research will be terminated and people will leave Hogwarts, go deal with other things. In order to prevent his research from becoming unfinished research with no end in sight, he must abstract himself from these basic and tedious tasks. Let's train a group of assistants now. Maybe later, we can even assign them to research on medicinal aspects. In addition to the 4 Harrys, he already had ideas for other candidates. Hufflepuff is the best at doing this. They are attentive and patient. For example, Gabrielle, Cedric Diggory, whom he remembered deeply. It may be too early to form a club, but it is still possible to find a few young wizards with potential and train them first. After sending the 4 people away, Alexis found Cedric and Gabrielle again the next day and told the story. The two were indeed very interested. After leading the 2 of them to make another observation record, Alexis gave out 2 more keys. On the 3rd day, Alexis met an acquaintance in the corridor, the fat little Neville Longbottom. He seemed to have something on his mind and looked depressed. Alexis thought for a moment and called out to the dejected Neville, "Mr. Alexis." The man was so nervous that he started to stutter. He looked at Alexis helplessly with an expression of "what did I do wrong?" which made Alexis dumbfounded. "Come with me, I need your help with something," Alexis greeted. Chapter 179, Calm and Uncalm. After calling Neville to the office and looking at Neville, who was embarrassed, Alexis got straight to the point. "I have some work here." He told the story succinctly and finally looked at Neville. "Would you like to come over and help?" Of course I do, Mr. Fraxis." Neville's nervous expression turned into excitement. Alexis nodded and asked him to come to her the next day, leading him to do it again after Cedric and Gabrielle. Neville looks clumsy, but the actual effect is very unexpected, and he does a great job. "Okay, Neville will be with you from now on," Alexis announced. After handing over the basic work, Alexis suddenly had a lot more time, and he started to work on the good little animals trained by the little wizards. Toad juice, snake gallbladder, rat liver. Among them, the one that most interested him was earthworms. This seemingly inconspicuous little thing belongs to the phylum Annelida. There are thousands of species, but most of them have one thing in common: resurrection. In addition to the medicinal value of earthworms, Alexis flipped through the books and compared the records in the books to test the medicinal value of earthworms. But what surprised him was the resurrection ability of earthworms. The resurrection mentioned here is of course not a true resurrection after death, but that it can continue to live after being cut off. After fracturing this observation, it was found that, after cutting off the earthworm, the muscle tissue on its section immediately strengthened its contraction, similar to blocking the fracture. This piqued Alexis' interest. In addition to earthworms, he found that snakes also had similar properties. After he cut off part of a snake, the severed body of the snake would twitch, as if it was still conscious. Alexis found this very interesting. He thought that, if he could figure out the principle of this, he might be able to extract certain ingredients from their bodies and make a potion that could be used after injury to help the wound heal quickly. Many wounds caused by spells are magically attached and cannot be healed by ordinary healing spells. Such injuries can only be sent to the hospital and treated by professional therapists. The most representative of these is Shen Feng Wuing. The process of causing damage by Shen Feng Wuing is very strange. It is not that the caster casts a spell and hits the enemy to cause damage. The damage mechanism of Shen Feng Wuing is more similar to Shunfa. Recite the spell, wave the wand, and then the damage will be cut silently on the victim. The specific manifestation is that when the caster waves the magic wand, a hole will immediately open in a certain part of the opponent's body. This kind of wound is more like the human body itself split open automatically, and there is no cutting process, although the wound looks like it is cut. Moreover, Shen Feng Wuang's injuries cannot be cured by ordinary healing spells, and the quick healing counter spell must be used. But people are not able to be taken to the hospital immediately if they want to. The injured often die on the way to the hospital. If such a fast healing agent is developed, this may be avoided. If this kind of potion really appears, it will be the perfect nemesis of Shen Feng Wuang. Thinking of this, Alexis laughed evilly. However, the situation is not as simple as Alexis thought. Although he was prepared and knew that this potion would not be completed in a short time, he was still in trouble. The earthworms in the laboratory were replaced one after another, and the snakes were replaced 3 times. He almost vomited during the dissection, but still made no progress. He found nothing in them that helped heal wounds. They were just like any other animal. Valley. This made Alexis particularly distressed. The laboratory has encountered difficulties, but the feedback from the outside world has been good. His statement was successfully published in the newspapers. Although the media continued to smear St. Mungo's, and the few guys who were said to have encountered unspoken rules at St. Mungo's were still jumping up and down, public opinion has gradually reversed. After a week of fermentation, with the blessing of Alexis's reputation and the operation of Lucius, St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Injuries and Injuries Chengong overcame the difficulties and opened its doors for business again. Alexis received letters of thanks from many St. Mungo's therapists, including Ms. Melium Straw, and from many people who seemed inexplicable to him, or even completely unknown to him. According to Lucius, the fact that St. Mungo's was able to unblock it so quickly was not only his fault, but many wizards were also behind it. Lucius even made a quick trip to Hogwarts to help him make a list. These are the wizards who support you this time. The wizards who have the value of continued development have been marked by me. We need to keep in good contact with them. It's a great start. Lucius stood in the laboratory, watching Alexis skillfully peeling off a snake, and twitching at the corners of his eyes. How can they help? Alexis asked, skillfully chopping the snake meat into pieces, mixing it with distilled water, and pouring it into the test tube. Then he put the test tube into the centrifuge, turned on the switch, and the centrifuge started working. Their support can take a lot of the friction away from you. Lucius watched Alexis take off his gloves, start washing his hands, get out of the way, and explain these people have great influence in the wizarding world. If we don't win over them, the people behind the scenes will. Have they not revealed their true nature yet? Alexis didn't really want to think about this and asked instead. He and Lucius had some differences in this regard. Lucius believes that he must unite all the forces that can be united, use them to his advantage, and tie these people together, even if he writes empty promises with white teeth. But Alexis didn't think that these old-fashioned guys could provide much help. Rather, he thought that one Malfoy family would be enough. Alexis did not feel that those who supported him would agree with his views. In fact, even Lucius had reservations about his views. These people may be able to help for a while, but sooner or later they will stand against him. The Malfoy family is different. Because of the unbreakable oath between Lucius and him, he does not need to worry about these things. If the Malfoy family does not support, or even betray him, and stands against him, it will be equivalent to violating the unbreakable oath. Lucius also understood the consequences of breaking an unbreakable oath without Alexis reminding him. Therefore, he didn't need to worry about the Malfoy family. As for tying others up in the same way, Alexis didn't think it was a good idea. If there are too many ancient and conservative forces, how is it different from the old environment? Lucius could not convince the stubborn Alexis. He could only shake his head and sigh. With the reversal of public opinion, we have completely gained the upper hand. The people behind the scenes seem to be afraid of this, and they are gradually closing their hands. Lucius replied. This also confirms our previous guess that St. Mungo's is just a test, and they have a bigger backup plan. Alexis nodded. The two had discussed this issue when they met at Malfoy Manor last time. Lucius thought at that time that the St. Mungo's matter was full of loopholes, and there was no way to knock Alexis over at once. It looked more like a plot. The first is to talk. Now it seems that Lucius guessed correctly. Chapter 180, Silly Big Bear. Sometimes Alexis had to admire that Lucius was extremely talented in this kind of conspiracy, and he could be called a genius among geniuses. With just some early information, he can directly see through his opponent's temptation. Then let's not move. Let's continue to wait and see what happens. I think this is the best response at the moment. Lucius nodded in agreement. We don't even know who the enemy is. The best way is to wait and see what the enemy is doing, and use the opponent's attacks again and again. Find out the enemy little by little, and then kill him with one blow. Alexis felt that what Lucius said made sense, nodded in agreement, turned around and took out the test tube from the centrifuge. After the action of the centrifuge, the turbid liquid in the test tube has separated into layers. He shook the test tube and smeared the separated liquid on the disemboweled rabbit abdomen on the operating table. After waiting for a while, nothing happened. Alexis shook her head regretfully. This time the experiment failed again. Draco is actually quite smart. Alexis ended the rabbit's painful life with a knife, lowered his head, and said he's paired with Harry and comes here every other day to act as an assistant. He's doing a great job. This was a response from Alexis, telling Lucius that he would fulfill his oath obediently, and that he would also take good care of Draco Malfoy. Lucius was happy to hear Alexis' compliment. He grinned, then thought of something, and tried to remain serious. Well, it's okay, Lucius said, causing Alexis to feel disgusted. Lucius leaves. After Alexis finished cleaning up the anatomy room, she sat back on the chair with a headache and started thinking. His research was completely in trouble, or a desperate situation would be more appropriate. He had no idea what to do next. This made him a little irritable, and the news brought by Lucius was not good news. Even though the St. Mungo's incident ended successfully, people would even praise Horcruxes' justice in casual conversations, praising him for daring to stand up and stand on the side of justice at such a moment. He deserves to be the hero who defeated Voldemort head on. But actually they got nothing. They don't know who the people behind the scenes are. They don't know their purpose. They don't know how they do it. They still know nothing about the people behind the scenes. This feeling of someone hiding in the dark, always ready to give you a bite, makes both Alexis and Lucius feel very uncomfortable. After sitting in the office for a while, Alexis left Hogwarts and rushed towards London. The time he had agreed upon with old Claire had come. According to the agreement, when he left last time, Claire would bring him an answer in 2 weeks, and now 2 weeks have passed. It was already dark when Alexis arrived in London. Follow the dangerous path to the big iron gate. Before he could find the doorbell, someone walked out of the house. Get away, boy. The man stood at the door, and a bald man who looked to be in his 40s stood at the door and shouted in a vicious voice. The man was like an iron tower, at least 2 meters tall according to visual inspection. He was only wearing a military green vest in the cold weather, and his bare bulging muscles seemed to burst the poor vest. Alexis looked confused. Even if this guy is 50 years old, was he only 3 years old when Grindelwald was imprisoned in Nurmengard in 1945? Grindelwald is so popular. Is it really as high as 99 and as low as just knowing how to leave? Why did he lose despite being so popular? Alexis turned around and was about to leave when a familiar voice sounded from the house, making him stop. Bear, who is it? It was Claire's voice. He sounded unwell, with a long series of coughs interspersed between the few words. I don't know where the wild boy came from. The strong man replied in a muffled voice. I'll drive him away right now. With that said, the strong man walked towards Alexis. Just drive away, don't cause trouble. Obeah agreed and walked towards Alexis with his arms raised, covering the light behind him, giving people a sense of oppression. Boy, I don't want to cause trouble, so get out of here before I get angry. Obeah waved his fist and said with a grin, otherwise I will crush your head. Alexis subconsciously glanced at his fist. Although it is not as big as my own head, it is almost enough to cover most of my head. Does this guy have giant blood? Alexis looked suspicious. Claire. Alexis simply shouted, it's me. Hearing Alexis shouting loudly, Obeah's expression became ferocious. His face immediately turned red, and he stretched out his hand to grab Alexis' head. Alexis dodged nimbly and drew her wand. All petrochemical. Unexpectedly, Obeah looked clumsy, but was actually very flexible. The moment Alexis threw out the magic spell, he stopped his momentum in time and stepped sideways to avoid it. Alexis's petrifying spell almost flew past his face, knocking him out of his loneliness. After escaping the petrification spell, Bayer clenched his fists, his eyes filled with excitement. "You are a wizard. They were sent here to catch us. Damn lucky. Go to hell." Bayer roared, bent his waist and abdomen, and rushed in front of Alexis like a cannonball. This again surprised Alexis. Judging from Bayer's movements, Alexis was almost certain that this was a squib or a muggle. If Bayer knew magic, he would definitely choose to use magic spells to fight back instead of rushing forward like this. Alexis couldn't remember the last time she encountered a wizard in physical combat. Alexis used Disapparition to dodge Bayer's attack and come up behind him. Bayer missed with one blow, but he didn't seem surprised. He turned around flexibly, as if there were eyes behind him. Without even looking, he opened his arms to hold Alexis in his arms. Alexis did not think that this was Bayer's warm welcome to him. He was strangled by Bayer's two arms that were almost as thick as his waist, and his whole body was broken into two parts in a matter of minutes. Fuchsia Alexis waved her wand. The two arms were almost attached to Alexis' body, and the next moment, Bayer was suddenly hung upside down. "Mr. Alexis." Claire finally walked out the door on crutches. Alexis put down her wand and ignored the struggling Bayer. "Claire." He just yelled, then frowned. When he heard Claire coughing non-stop before, he thought it was because the old man was old and had a cold, but now it seemed that it was obviously not that simple. "Are you Alexis?" Behind him, Bayer, who was hanging upside down, stopped struggling and shouted in disbelief. Combined with his posture at this time and his dull voice, it sounded very funny. How did this happen? Alexis ignored Bayer behind him and asked with a frown. Chapter 181, Strange Curse. Claire waved her hand point. This action seemed to affect the injury, and he immediately covered his mouth, bent over and coughed. The sound made Alexis worried. He was so afraid that this guy would cough his lungs out. Claire, who was energetic and rosy 2 weeks ago, was now like a deflated rubber ball. Her face turned pale, the little flesh that had grown on her face was gone, and she became skin and bones again. The waist that was originally slightly straight also bent down again. It's even more rickety than before, and it's almost over. What's wrong? Seeing that Claire was unwilling to say anything, Alexis turned around and put down Bayer and asked. With a plop, Bayer fell to the ground, making a muffled sound. He stood up nonchalantly, patted the dust on his body, scratched his bald head, and looked at Claire. Go in and talk. Go in and talk. Claire finished coughing and greeted quickly. Bayer stepped forward, supported Claire, and walked into the house. Alexis was a little worried that Bayer would crush Claire again with a little force. Entering the house, a scent of jasmine mixed with a faint stench hit your face, making Alexis frown slightly. He has been studying snakes and earthworms for some time. Thanks to the dissection during this period, he has become much more adaptable to this weird smell. Otherwise, he would have been lying at the door etching at this time instead of sitting down, drinking tea at the table. The tea was poured by Bayer. He first put Claire on the bed, then walked into the kitchen, held the teacup, and placed it in front of Alexis. Please have some tea. Completely different from the ferocious rage just now, Bayer looked gentle at this time. Even though he was sitting on the chair aggrievedly with such a big body, he looked very aggrieved and very funny. What happened? How did you get hurt? Alexis put down the teacup and continued to ask, has anyone found this place? Are you fighting? Who is the other party? At this sensitive time, Alexis couldn't help but think too much. Everyone knows about his relationship with Grindelwald, so it seems natural that Grindelwald's remaining subordinates belong to him. Someone attacked here. Was it for him? Bayer scratched his head again and looked at Claire. Claire sighed, pulled out an envelope from under the bed, and handed it to Alexis. It's an aura from the Ministry of Magic, Bayer said in a muffled voice. They were trying to capture Claire, but Claire fought back and fought them off. My uncle heard that Claire was injured and was worried about his safety, so he sent me here. Alexis looked at Claire. Claire nodded, sighed, and coughed again. We have collected all the information. Claire coughed intermittently and said such a simple sentence for half a minute. Alexis did not check the information immediately. He got up and came to the bedside to carefully observe Claire's condition. As we got closer, the stench became clearer. Curse? Alexis asked with some confusion. Most people like to concisely divide curses into black curses and white curses. They call those that can cause harm to people black curses, and those that cannot cause harm are called white curses. In the same way, those who are good at using black magic are called black wizards, and those who are good at using white magic are called white wizards. But in fact this classification method is neither accurate nor scientific. Standard spells, Elementary by Miranda Gorshak begins with, there are many types of charms, jinxes, hexes and curses are collectively known as dark spells. Such charms will not be covered in this book. Standard spells, Elementary is only a textbook for first year students at Hogwarts, which is what Harry and the others use. Among people who know a little bit, they often use the Transfiguration curse to explain that there are not only black curses and white curses. But in fact this statement is also wrong. Spells focus more on changing or increasing the inherent properties of an object. It focuses on what it does, while transformation spells focus more on what it is. This is also the content learned in standard spells, Elementary. Normally, Harry and the others have already learned this lesson. However, even with such a simple thing, at least half of the people in the wizarding world don't understand at all. They don't understand transfiguration and magic. They don't understand that magic is not just black and white. They don't understand how to cast magic. Why does the curse suddenly fail or even backfire? If you don't even understand the principle of the curse, of course something unexpected will happen. Among them, the jinxes, poisonous curses and curses classified as black curses are what most people must understand or master. In fact, there is no wizard who only learns what they call white magic and knows nothing about black magic. Such a wizard can't even handle a boggart. Among the three, curses are the least harmful to people. They are usually more similar to pranks and are annoying, but do not cause fatal harm. Poison spells will make the victim feel pain. Curses are the most poisonous, and will mostly cause irreversible damage. The three famous unforgivable curses fall within the scope of curses. It just so happens that Alexis is a dark wizard who is particularly good at curses. As the adopted son of Grindelwald, Alec has grown up reading a series of books such as the Encyclopedia of Spells, 300 Famous Curses, The Principle and Invention of Curses, and The Story of Curses. Sith dare not say that he knows all the curses, but he can recognize at least % of them. However, the curse on Claire happened to be that few 1%. This looks like a wound caused by a magic spell similar to a salvo of bullets. Alexis grabbed Claire's arm and looked carefully at the wound on his arm. It was a long and narrow wound, with rolled skin and rough edges, and the surrounding muscles were blue and black. If Claire hadn't admitted it himself, Alexis would have suspected that he was accidentally cut by the wire. But most curses pursue accuracy and efficiency. They are either like Shen Feng Wuing, where the cuts are neat and uniform, and the wounds have already appeared before the victim even reacts, or just kill him with one blow like the killing curse. There is no curse that can cause such an untidy wound like this, and there is no curse that cannot achieve its goal immediately, unless it is a torture spell like Cruciatus. What about those people? Alexis couldn't figure out the reason for a while, so she asked instead. Ran. Claire said something, and coughed violently again. Are you sure they are auras? Alexis asked again. This was important to him. If it was really an aura, then Lucius's guess might come true. I don't know. Claire panted and shook her head. They didn't use magic. Fraxis was in a slightly more relaxed mood. He didn't use any spells, so he was probably not an aura. That's what they were. Bear suddenly made a sound. He ran away somewhere, took some dirty clothes, and threw them on the ground. Isn't this JC's clothes? Alexis picked up the clothes and looked at Claire and Bear speechlessly. This is the clothes of JC, the aura in the muggle world. The ones who attacked you were not auras, but a group of muggles. Chapter 182, Anti-Gang Operations in London. That's the aura. Bear said stubbornly. How do you know? Bear was speechless. It seems that he really isn't an aura. Claire breathed a sigh of relief and spoke. No, it's an aura. Bear stubbornly insisted on his idea. Bear. Claire became a little angry. He raised his voice slightly and shouted at Bea, "Wizards will not collude with muggles. Even our enemies won't. Can. Absolutely not." Bea didn't dare to talk back. Seeing Claire's excitement, he was also afraid of accidentally making the old man angry to death. "But why can't wizards collude with muggles?" Bea turned his back and muttered softly. Claire didn't hear this sentence clearly, but Alexis was slightly closer, but heard it clearly. He glanced at Bea in surprise and said nothing more. "It seems serious, Claire. You need to go to the hospital," Alexis said. Claire smiled bitterly and shook her head. "Although we were lucky enough to survive, we can only linger like this. Once we show up, we will be arrested and executed immediately." As followers of Grindelwald, a generation of loyal believers of the Dark Lord, they were treated even worse than Death Eaters and would be executed immediately upon discovery. After all, the turmoil caused by Grindelwald was much greater than Voldemort's, and Grindelwald's ideas were much more dangerous than Voldemort's. In the eyes of many wizards, no matter how much Voldemort caused trouble, it was only an internal problem among wizards, while Grindelwald was deliberately provoking confrontation and war between wizards and muggles. According to Grindelwald, wizards and muggles are two different races. War between giants, goblin rebellion. Looking back at history, every war involving races has been extremely tragic. No one likes war, and no one likes racial war. Grindelwald does not represent the entire wizarding world. But this problem is not difficult for Alexis. He just happened to help St. Mungo solve a problem not long ago. At this time, Alexis was even a little grateful that the wizarding world was lagging behind. Thanks to the backward system, hospitals in the wizarding world neither require identity information to be registered nor signatures from guardians or family members. The patient just needs to show up at the hospital. "We can't stay here any longer," Alexis said. "You must move immediately. Go to St. Mungo's hospital for magical maladies and injuries first. After Claire is cured, you can change places." "Why?" Claire asked, puzzled. "If you let JC go, they will come back soon." Claire still wanted to show off her strength and speak harshly. She opened her mouth and a series of coughs came out. "You know nothing about the Muggle world." Alexis stood up and directed Bea to pack his things while explaining wizards do not have an absolute advantage over Muggles. They have guns. Bea, who had already put things into a wooden suitcase, raised his head and said, "It's faster than a curse. It's similar to a crushing curse. It's very painful when it hits someone." Alexis spread her hands and looked at Claire. Claire wanted to say something else, but Alexis turned around and took the wooden box from Bea's hand, instructing him to carry Claire on his back and walk out. Bea is right. The weapons in the Muggle world are far more powerful than you think. "Aren't you a wizard?" Alexis looked at Bea and asked. Bea nodded. "He's a squib." Valley. Claire, who was carried on Bea's back, said this is the grandson of Old Bea. Old Bea's son died heroically for Lord Grindelwald's cause, leaving only the newborn baby Bea, who was raised by Old Bea. When we found Old Bea before, he was already dying. Before he died, he entrusted Bea to us. "Aren't you hostile to Muggles? Squibs can be considered Muggles, right?" Claire seemed to be able to read minds and saw through Alexis' thoughts at a glance. He coughed for a while and then said, "Lord Grindelwald's proposal does not include squibs, but Bea is an exception. He is only 20 years old this year." "Alexis? Aren't you kidding me? Grindelwald failed in 1945. You just said that Bea's father died for Grindelwald's cause. Could it be that Bea was born 27 years after his father's death? His father died after Lord Grindelwald failed. Can you really read minds? Or are you actually a legilimency master?" Claire seemed to have seen through the idea of fracking again, and he burst out laughing, followed by another fit of coughing. "You made it very obvious. Leave a good signal to others, and don't come here again." Alexis didn't want to continue letting Claire act as a mind reader. He looked back at the dark little castle, and said in a deep voice, "I will rearrange your base for you." The three of them came to the road, and Alexis stopped a private car. The owner of the car was a kind-hearted student. He seemed to realize that Claire was seriously ill, so he stopped and prepared to give them a ride. Claire still wanted to resist, but Alexis looked at her, and the old man smacked his lips without making a sound. He looks very ill, maybe tuberculosis. I think you should go to London Bridge Hospital. His respiratory department is the best in London. As the car owner spoke, he took the initiative to speed up the car. There are very few cars on the road in London at night. I don't want to go to a muggle hospital. Claire finally couldn't hold back and spoke. He looked at Alexis helplessly, his eyes full of pleading. What? The car owner looked back at Claire in confusion. He was just an ordinary person and didn't understand what muggles meant. Send us to the Byron Hotel, where I have my personal doctor. Alexis was too lazy to talk to Claire and lied. Okay. The car owner shrugged. It's just that he seems to have tuberculosis. You should pay attention to safety. If he really had tuberculosis, how dare you drag us along? You are very brave. Alexis cursed secretly. He is not Claire. He has been wandering around the muggle world for more than 10 years. Alexis knows a lot about the common sense of the muggle world. He knows what tuberculosis means to ordinary people. Thanks to the lack of vehicles on the road, they arrived at the Byron Hotel quickly. Alexis thanked the car owner, watched the car go away, and then led Claire and Bear into the Byron Hotel. Before bidding farewell to the car owner, Alexis gave him a wooden box as a thank you. If someone threatens your safety, open it and throw out the contents. Someone will come to your rescue soon, Alexis said. Inside the wooden box lies a cursed notebook point according to the regulations of the Ministry of Magic. If a muggle is under a curse, they will immediately send someone to deal with it. A small evil curse won't really kill a person, but it can still cause some trouble. He still had his room at the Byron Hotel. He just needed to talk to the front desk and get his identity verified. Taking the key and entering the room, Alexis moved the sofa to reveal the fireplace behind it. This was a fireplace he had modified, and the hotel didn't know it. At the same time, the fireplace was also connected to the Flu network, but it was an illegal connection. Alexis lit the fireplace and grabbed a handful of Flu powder. Street Mungo's Hospital for the Magical and Wounded, he shouted loudly and clearly. The flames in the fireplace turned green. There was a distortion, and Alexis disappeared. Street Mungo's Hospital for Magical Maladies and Maladies. Bear and Claire followed closely behind and disappeared into the room. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 183, Joint Action. After sending Claire to the therapist, Bear followed to guard Claire, and Alexis had time to open the envelope. After multiple investigations, it has been confirmed that the International Federation of Wizards will join forces with the local governments of the Ministry of Magic to carry out an anti-gang operation from April 1992. It is said that the purpose of this operation is to eliminate evil wizards and promote the International Statute of Wizarding Secrecy. Further implementation. The goals of this action include, but are not limited to, our compatriots, Death Eaters, werewolves, vampires, escaped prisoners, and any wizards or muggle criminals with a criminal record or ties to wizards. Special note, the laws referred to in this joint operation include not only the laws of the Ministry of Magic and the laws formulated by the International Federation of Wizards in various places, but also the laws of the local muggle government. This information has been verified at least 3 times, and its credibility is extremely high. The following persons are investigators for this information and they will be responsible for this information. Below are the signatures of several dragons and phoenixes. This is a very formal piece of intelligence information, complete with content, format, and person in charge. It has a strong sense of formality. This made Alexis sigh. He couldn't help but want to go back to Nurmengard and ask Grindelwald face to face, how did you lose to Dumbledore? Are you sure you didn't drain it? Compare the followers of Grindelwald to the Order of the Phoenix. It wasn't that Alexis disliked the Order of the Phoenix. With this small piece of information and a thin piece of paper, one could see how formal the organization established by Grindelwald was. And what about the Order of the Phoenix? The Order of the Phoenix uses the Calling Guard to deliver messages and gather intelligence through Mundungus. Sometimes Alexis wonders if Mundungus himself has been bribed. As for the information he collected, after finishing his emotion, Alexis stared at the letter and fell into deep thought. He somewhat understood why Claire was so angry at Bea calling JC an aura. This alliance between wizards and muggles is a betrayal in Claire's eyes, a naked betrayal. Point for Claire, wizards are noble and muggles are lowly. Apart from the fact that they look alike, they are completely different. Will people seek cooperation with ants and interfere with ant society? This choice of the International Federation of Wizards, in Claire's opinion, is a complete abandonment of the dignity of being a wizard. This is different from Dumbledore and others. Although Dumbledore was the direct cause of Grindelwald's failure, firstly, they all heard about the stories of Dumbledore and Grindelwald, and secondly, Dumbledore's behavior seemed more like sympathy and protection to them. In Claire's view, Dumbledore is like an extreme member of the Animal Welfare Society. He has great sympathy for muggles, and then in order to prevent Grindelwald, a carnivore, from continuing to kill, he defeated Green Devo. Although Dumbledore defeated Grindelwald, and although Dumbledore directly caused their great cause to die prematurely, in the eyes of many people in Claire, Dumbledore was on their side to a certain extent. Dumbledore had a very kind attitude towards muggles, and he advocated protecting muggles. This is like someone raising a particularly pampered pet, and the owner takes extra care of the pet. Dumbledore never considered himself a muggle from beginning to end. He was clearly aware of his identity as a wizard, and showed the greatest sympathy and kindness to pets like muggles with an ability of a wizard. Both Grindelwald and Dumbledore are completely different from the wizards united in the letter. Join forces with the Muggle JC to clean up crime in the wizarding and Muggle worlds, and create a better living environment. No matter what he said, in the eyes of Claire and others, this was betrayal, a betrayal of abandoning one's own principles as a wizard. Alexis has no doubt that once the news is announced, there will be many people who have similar thoughts to Claire. The wizarding world has been closed for too long. They close their eyes and arrogantly think that they are the most noble existence in the world, and that the entire universe revolves around them. It's really pitiful. Maybe many people in the wizarding world don't even understand the concept of the universe, or they still only have the understanding that the earth is the center of the universe. Why did you come out? Alexis was staring at the letter in a daze when he suddenly felt a shadow falling in front of his eyes. When he looked up, he realized that it was Bea sitting over. Valley. Squeak. Bea's tall body made the chair creak, which made the big man who looked twice as old as his actual age a little embarrassed. He owed his buttocks. The therapist said Claire wasn't under a spell at all. Bea said angrily. They say Claire has tuberculosis. The Muggle car owner was right. Alexis looked at Bea with wide eyes, and Bea seemed a little frustrated. He was feeling depressed too. That stink Claire doesn't know the healing spell, and he won't let me buy Muggle-made medicine. The wound on his arm has suppurated. Alexis nodded, somewhat dumbfounded. Had he been trapped by snakes and earthworms recently? His mind was full of complicated thoughts. When he saw the injury on Claire's arm, he instinctively thought that it was a serious or deep wound, but he never thought about it. That might really just be a scratch from the wire. Have you ever gone to a Muggle pharmacy to buy medicine? Alexis suddenly reacted and asked in surprise. Bea nodded, looking at Alexis, but his eyes looked a little disappointed, and he didn't know what he was disappointed about. Actually, Muggles have many great inventions. Bea lowered his head and muttered quietly. Although he didn't recognize Alexis when they first met, he certainly knew who Alexis was. The adopted son of Lord Grindelwald, the successor of Lord Grindelwald's great cause, is the person he wants to follow and be loyal to. He will also contribute everything to a great cause like his grandfather, his father, and his mother. He had been prepared for this because his grandfather had taught him this for as long as he could remember. After discovering that he was a squib, Bea felt scared for the first time. When he learned the news that he was a squib, the way his always kind grandfather looked at him changed. Bea was extremely sure that, even though his grandfather didn't do anything to him in the end, in the eyes of old Bea, he was not a person at all, but a chicken, a dog, a sheep, whatever. But in the end, old Bea did nothing, just shook his head and sighed, and died in depression. He had read magic, potions, and botany by Alexis. During the days when he learned that he was a squib, this series of books by Alexis gave him new hope. He had been taught since childhood that wizards were humans and muggles were animals. But one day he suddenly learned that he was not a human, but a close relative of animals. This feeling of the whole world being overturned was far beyond what a young man could experience bearable. During those torturous days, Alexis' magic, potions, and botany accompanied him through it. He still remembered the way his grandfather saw him reading magic, potions, and botany. He was angry, but due to Alexis' identity, old Bayer couldn't say anything, so he could only groan in anger. In Bayer's mind, Alexis is his life mentor. Although he still doesn't understand what Alexis has taught him, this does not prevent him from worshipping Alexis in his heart. It's not because Alexis is Grindelwald's adopted son and wants to inherit Grindelwald's great cause. Just because he was Alexis, he wrote magic, potions, and botany. Chapter 184, Talent and Interest. Bayer is undoubtedly ignorant. He doesn't even know why he admires Alexis. He only knows that Alexis is very powerful. Perhaps he subconsciously understood that the ideas in Alexis's magic, potions, and botany were a subversion of the core ideas of the great cause. He subconsciously agreed with Alexis's ideas, and because he had grown up the education I received, and the recognition of the people around me were all great undertakings, so I retreated. He may have realized that once he continued to delve deeper into this matter, things would become serious, so he chose to cover it up. Pretend you don't know anything. He agreed with Alexis in his heart, but he showed his approval of the great cause. Therefore, when hearing Alexis ask this question, he felt a little disappointed in his heart, but he did not show it. He only dared to mutter in a low voice, "Actually, muggles have many great inventions." But obviously, the ignorant Bayer misunderstood Alexis. "How much do you know about the muggle world?" Alexis stared at the big man who said, "I'm very depressed, don't come to comfort me." He exuded an aura of melancholy. This excited Alexis slightly. Bayer's heart thumped, and he quickly raised his head to look at Alexis, then shook his head vigorously. But he was really not good at lying. He stammered, "I don't know much," for a long time. In the end, he couldn't stand it anymore and hurriedly explained, "Sir, my understanding of the muggle world is based on the purpose of inquiring about the enemy's situation. We have not fought against muggles for decades. The development of things is always changing. I want to know more about muggles in order to make plans for the future." Facing Alexis's enthusiastic eyes, Bayer became more and more guilty as he spoke, and his voice became smaller and smaller. "Do you really think so?" Alexis looked around and then asked quietly, "Thanks to the convenience of magic, wizards in the wizarding world are surprisingly ignorant. Alexis can guarantee that there are definitely a large number of wizards who don't even know what tuberculosis is. Perhaps the biggest connection between the wizarding world and the muggle world is the distinctive Hogwarts Express. Alexis has visited other magic schools. Some of them take carriages, some give door keys to students, and some don't provide transportation at all, and they all rely on the parents of the students to figure out their own solutions. Relatively speaking, the Hogwarts Express at Hogwarts is simply an outlier among outliers." Alexis had read about the history of the Hogwarts Express in the Hogwarts Library. In the beginning, Hogwarts also adopted the portkey method of travel. They gave students portkeys, and when it opened on the first day of school, students used the portkeys to come to Hogwarts. However, because the demand for portkeys is so huge, many problems have arisen. Almost every few years, a young wizard will disappear due to portkeys. Later, they discovered that muggles used a very long car to rush to their destination. This kind of car smoked and whined. After careful observation, they felt that this was a mode of travel that met their needs. So they got a train, modified it, and then laid tracks from King's Cross Station in London to Hogsmeade. Note 1: everything is ready, and the Hogwarts Express finally starts running. However, they underestimated wizards' rejection of muggles. When they learned that their children would take muggle transportation to school, the angry wizard parents almost demolished Hogwarts. Although the matter was finally suppressed by the Ministry of Magic, there are still parents who object to this day, and they refuse to let their children travel to school on the Hogwarts Express. They regarded the running train as a disgrace to the wizarding world. Whatever you think, Bayer, Tell me what you know about the Muggle world. Seeing that Bea remained silent, Alexis said again. I read your books when I was a kid. Bea said angrily. When you were a kid? Alexis glanced at Bea, who looked in his 40s, and the corners of his mouth twitched. Gah. He then remembered that Claire had said that Bea's actual age was only 20 years old. Just looks a little old. Calculating it this way, what he said when he was a child is actually reasonable. It made me interested in the Muggle world. At that time I had just been determined to be a squib. Bea looked a little depressed. He told intermittently what happened before and after he was determined to be a squib. Can you understand? Alexis asked in surprise. When he said these words, he felt vaguely that something was wrong. But this is actually true. First of all, his magic, potions, and botany was only published in the wizarding world and did not contact Muggle publishing houses. Therefore, the readers of magic, potions, and botany are all wizards. Secondly, the title of the book contains the words potion and botany, and it is classified as a professional book rather than a travelogue or storybook, which excludes most wizards. The only ones who are still interested in this book are some potion masters and herbal masters. They may have been interested in Alexis because of his breakthroughs in potions, but more likely they were resistant to Alexis's unconventional inclusion of ordinary plants and animals in the scope of potions. Calculating it this way, those who will really buy this series of books should be those nerdy potion masters or very tolerant wizards. Sales of magic, potions, and botany have never been high, and that's why Alexis was mentally prepared for this when he published magic, potions, and botany, but he didn't have much to say, and a large part of those who buy magic, potions, and botany cannot understand it at all because it is completely different from traditional potions. It's like showing Einstein's papers to a medieval cardinal. Maybe the cardinal's professionalism is very solid, maybe he has a tolerant heart, but limited by his vision and knowledge, he still can't understand what he should not be able to understand. Therefore, Alexis had no hope that readers would understand his book. As a result, someone suddenly said to him, "Yes, I have read your book and studied every volume carefully." This surprised Alexis. You know, Bea is not a student of Hogwarts, and he has never taken Alexis's class. I've read a lot of Muggle books, Bea whispered, looking at Alexis cautiously. The classification method of plants in your book actually draws on the botanical classification methods of Muggles, and includes special plants from the magical world. This sentence is enough to prove that Bea can actually read Alexis's book. Alexis looked at Bea with more and more eager eyes. He began to become interested in Bea. This tall and thick man seemed to have extremely high talent in pharmacy. Maybe he can bring different inspiration to himself. Bea, listen to me. Alexis recalled what Grindelwald taught him, with a fake smile on his face. Are you interested in doing research with me? I'm writing magic, potions, and zoology, and I can add your name to it. Note, the Hogwarts Express stops at Hogsmeade Station, not Hogwarts Station, and Hogwarts has no platform points. See the original work for details. Chapter 185, Guess. Claire's curse was cured, and Alexis took the two to the Byron Hotel, opened a few more rooms, and used it as a temporary base for Claire and the others. As for going further, Alexis had some ideas in mind, but not now. In the end, Bea did not leave with Alexis. He chose to stay and continue to take care of Claire. This made Alexis very sorry. After parting ways with Claire, Alexis made a copy of the letter, erased signatures and other content, and kept only the specific intelligence information, and sent it to Lucius, then returned to Hogwarts. Lucius responded quickly, and early the next morning, the owl flew into Hogwarts with the letter from Malfoy Manor. Lucius did not question Alexis's source or the authenticity of the information, which in his opinion was meaningless. The cooperation between the two people is now in the honeymoon period, and the future is still unknown. At least now they will not deceive each other. At least they will not deceive each other with such a big thing. The letter begins with a brief greeting, and then gets straight to the point. This matter is very problematic, Alexis. I have not received any information at all. I will visit several other families later to inquire about the specific situation. But I think they shouldn't know, otherwise I wouldn't have received any news. Since the International Federation of Wizards has hidden this from most people, I think this matter will be carried out quietly behind the scenes. Even in April, they are unlikely to make the matter public. Maybe you can try to ask Rufus. If this matter is hidden even from the Ministry of Magic, Alexis, I think you can understand what this means without me having to say it. Of course Alexis understands. If the International Federation of Wizards even hid the news from the local Ministry of Magic, directly bypassed the local Ministry of Magic, and cooperated directly with local governments, this would be a signal that the International Confederation of Wizards wanted to abolish all ministries of magic and bring the wizarding world directly under its unified jurisdiction. At the same time, the group of criminals described in intelligence will also change. Their composition will not be as simple as Grindelwald's followers, Death Eaters, etc. as mentioned in the intelligence. Anyone who dares to go against the International Federation of Wizards and oppose or obstruct unification will be labeled as criminal. The label molecule is included in the category of cleaning. If things really develop in this direction, what they are about to face next will definitely be a catastrophe. Alexis absolutely did not believe that the person who came up with this idea would be a useless idiot. Since the International Federation of Wizards dared to do this, they must have the confidence. Moreover, when things really develop to that point, it will not only be the wizard's own business, but also involve governments around the world. As one of the few people in the wizarding world who knows the most about the Muggle world, Alexis has a pessimistic view of how things will develop. He does have an extraordinary background, and Grindelwald and Dumbledore do make him special, but all of this is limited to the wizarding world. Just go out and pick up a Muggle on the streets of London and ask him, who is Dumbledore? Do you know Grindelwald? See how many you know. Furthermore, does this mean that the Muggle government is ready to declare war on wizards? Is this matter led by the International Confederation of Wizards, who have reached some kind of agreement with the Muggle government, or is it that the Muggle government has infiltrated the International Confederation of Wizards into a sieve, and the International Confederation of Wizards has become a paradise for the Muggle government? Alexis is unknown. Valley. He collected Lucius's letter, and then wrote letters to Mundungus and Claire respectively. As a member of the Order of the Phoenix, Mundungus' position is naturally consistent with Dumbledore, which means that he will be very opposed to Grindelwald's ideas and even attack Grindelwald's remaining subordinates. This is also the reason why Alexis agreed to contact both sides individually, without thinking about letting the two sides converge into one. But now that the situation is serious, he can no longer care about so much. Alexis directly asked Mundungus to go to the Byron Hotel in London and follow the instructions of the people there, and then explained the current situation in a letter to Claire. I know that maybe you all have great opinions on each other, but now is not the time to care about these. You must work together closely to find out the situation of the International Federation of Wizards in the shortest possible time. Now is not the time for internal strife. Claire, I trust your overall view and ability. After sending the two letters, Alexis did not dare to delay and went directly to find Professor McGonagall. Now that Dumbledore is gone, matters at Hogwarts will be decided by Professor McGonagall. Professor McGonagall, I think you should take a look at this. When Alexis broke into Professor McGonagall's office, Professor McGonagall was grading homework. She lowered her head, glanced up, and looked directly at Alexis from above her glasses. What's up? Alexis handed the information from Claire to McGonagall, and while McGonagall was reading the letter, he told Lucius about his guess. If my suspicion is true, Professor McGonagall, this will be a catastrophe, a conspiracy far greater than the threat posed by Voldemort. Of course he hopes that the magical world can openly accept the Muggle world and learn from the Muggle world's advancements, but this is based on maintaining the status quo. He himself is a wizard who knows magic. His identity determines his position. He can only stand on the side of the wizard. Even if he becomes a traitor and helps the Muggle government break down the barriers of the wizarding world and conquer the wizarding world, he doesn't think his end will be that good, and he won't naively think that wizards will get any preferential treatment at that time. Since ancient times, the purpose of human beings conquering an area and one group conquering another group has never been to bring advanced ideas, conduct friendly exchanges, and help backward friends grow and progress. Growth and progress always come spontaneously from the inside out, not after being oppressed or conquered. According to Alexis' experience in the Muggle world, once the wizarding world is conquered by the Muggle government, what awaits them is by no means friendly exchanges. This also applies to the wizarding world. There are giant wars far away, and goblin rebellions nearby. These are all living examples. As for the grievances between Muggles and wizards, it could last for 3 days and 3 nights. Throughout history, every time a wizard was known to Muggles, what he brought to the wizard was not happy memories, but cruel persecution such as burning, dismemberment, etc. No one, not even Alexis herself, believed that this time would be any different. Besides, if he was not a good wizard, why would he become a traitor and work as a dog for Muggles? He does not discriminate against Muggles, but he also clearly understands that he is out of place in the Muggle world. Chapter 186, Dumbledore is back. After Mag had read the letter, his expression became solemn. The elegant and graceful professor figured out Alexis's concerns in a short period of time, and she even went further than Alexis thought. Professor McGonagall looks serious and old-fashioned, but she is actually an amiable person. She treats every student as her own child, and is dedicated to her responsibilities. But this does not mean that Professor McGonagall is a white lotus who only knows how to take care of people, and she is not a holy mother. Even Dumbledore would shy away from the respected professor when he became angry. As for Alexis, who was showing off his teeth and claws outside, was as obedient as a cat in front of Mag. He could not hate this professor who had strict demands on him, and even punished him. He even respected him very much. In fact, Mag is not some silly sweet princess who lives in a castle and is ignorant of the world. The excellence of this professor is often overlooked due to her low-key style. Minerva McGonagall once studied at Hogwarts. During her time at school, she was elected as a prefect and female student representative with an absolute advantage. She was named the most promising newcomer by Transfiguration today and was selected as the most promising newcomer in the school. Obtained excellent results in all subjects in the OWL examination and Newt examination. Compared to Alexis, who got excellent results in all subjects by cheating through loopholes in the examination administration, she got the exams with hard skills. The last such outstanding person was named Albus Dumbledore. Professor McGonagall once worked in the Department of Magical Law Enforcement. She left her job because her colleagues ridiculed her father for being a Muggle, and entered Hogwarts to become a teacher. She taught Newt Scamander and Leta Lestrange, who often clashed with McGonagall as she fought back against rumors about her dead parents and brother. Professor McGonagall once chased Leta throughout the Hogwarts campus for casting a silencing curse on a rude student, and deducted more than 200 points from Leta. But something interesting happened. Professor McGonagall finally lifted the curse on the student, who had been cursed, but the student immediately spat out fragrance and continued to insult Ritter, and then Professor McGonagall cast the spell back. It can be seen from here that Professor McGonagall is not the old-fashioned person she seems at all. In addition, this seemingly amiable professor also participated in the counterattack against Voldemort. At that time, she was only slightly less important than Dumbledore. Professor McGonagall did not ask Alexis about the source of the information. Although she had not experienced Grindelwald's era, she still recognized Grindelwald's logo. She just gave Alexis a warning look. Professor McGonagall, we need to be ready, Alexis said. What to prepare? Preparation for war. After hesitating, Alexis said solemnly. Professor McGonagall stood up and handed the letter back to Alexis, shaking her head. Alexis, you don't understand war. I will write to Dumbledore, and he will be at the International Federation of Wizards to ask what he has discovered. Just when Alexis was a little disappointed with Professor McGonagall's reaction, Professor McGonagall said again, you go find Lupin and ask him to inform the remaining order members. Alexis's eyes lit up, and she immediately nodded in agreement. It turns out that Professor McGonagall did not have any illusions. While she was investigating the situation, she was also preparing for the worst case scenario. But McGonagall and Alexis' actions failed. Before they could start preparations, Dumbledore returned. They met Dumbledore in the principal's office on the 8th floor. Dumbledore looked a little tired and weathered. Looking tired. When Alexis and Professor McGonagall came in, there was another person in the room, Sirius Black. Sirius was looking for a knife, ready to scratch Phineas's portrait. Alexis didn't know what Phineas said with that foul mouth, but he supported Sirius' actions. "I'm very sorry, Valley." As soon as they met, Dumbledore apologized, which made Alexis a little confused. He didn't realize what the apology was for. "Blake?" Professor McGonagall reacted immediately. She looked at the furious Sirius Black with concern in her eyes. "No way." Only then did Alexis react, and looked at Dumbledore with wide eyes. Dumbledore nodded sadly. What's on their minds? Slugs. Phineas, who was hiding behind Armando Dupont, stuck his head out and shouted to shut up. Sirius Black didn't have any respect for his ancestor. He roared rudely, his eyes were red, and he was about to tear Phineas apart. "You little bastard. A disgrace to the Black family." Phineas hid behind Armando Dupont and shouted at Black, "You simply don't deserve the surname Black." Alexis walked up to Blake and patted his shoulder gently, not knowing what to say for a moment. Black made an insulting gesture at Phineas, then slumped his shoulders in dejection. "They said there is insufficient evidence, but I don't understand what kind of evidence they want," Blake said lowly. Alexis sighed, took out the letter from her arms, and handed it to Dumbledore. "Look, this is the news I got." After saying that, he turned to Blake. "Blake, that's a bunch of people with cerebral palsy. Their heads are full of shit. Ignore them." This comfort was extremely feeble, and had no effect at all. That may be why they thought the evidence was insufficient, Dumbledore said with a sigh, his eyes looking at Alexis filled with worry. He had only been away for a few days, so why was Alexis so closely connected with Grindelwald's people? "We must be ready to fight back." Alexis faced Dumbledore, and he said angrily, "Originally, I was going to ask Mundungus and Claire to investigate whether the International Federation of Wizards was innocent, but now it seems that this is not necessary at all. No matter what, they are traitors to the wizarding world. They will be nailed to the pillar of shame. We can't sit still." Blake looked at Alexis in confusion. He felt that something must have happened that he didn't know about, otherwise Alexis' reaction would have been too great. The International Federation of Wizards has long been ready to unite with the Muggle government. Alexis explained the information succinctly. Blake's eyes immediately turned red, and his anger level rose sharply, reaching the peak of his meter. "I told you, they're a bunch of shit. Slugs." Phineas, who was reminded of his own portrait by Armando Dupont, intervened at the right time. This time no one stood against him. All the portraits were shocked to hear the news Alexis brought. "What is this operation? What are the people of the International Confederation of Wizards thinking? Is your brain broken? Was his brain eaten by the winged demon?" Chapter 187, Dumbledore's Difficulties. Alexis and Black were invited out of the principal's office by Dumbledore, which made Alexis a little unsure of Dumbledore's thoughts. When he wanted to come, he brought out the intelligence. Dumbledore looked shocked after seeing it, and looked at him differently. Then everyone happily discussed how to deal with it. Should they wait until April comes to give them a head-on attack, or should they take the initiative and capture the city? International Confederation of Wizards. However, the reality is that Dumbledore looked calm, said that things were not what he thought, and that he would discuss it with Minerva, and then sent them both away. Sent them away. What exactly did you experience in the International Federation of Wizards? Alexis was a little angry. He took Blake back to the office and asked aloud. Sirius Black couldn't stay on the Hogwarts campus. He would have to send people away soon. Back from St. Mungo's, Dumbledore helped me submit an application to reopen the case. Sirius Black said sadly. It can be seen that this incident had a great impact on him. Although he didn't say it on weekdays, and even if he occasionally mentioned it, he would act like I just escaped from prison illegally. It's cool. In fact, Blake still cared about it in his heart. A few days later, I received a letter from the International Federation of Wizards approving the reopening of the case, and Dumbledore took me with him. The retrial started in Wizengham at courtroom no. Left square bracket dash right square bracket. After a 7-day trial, they finally announced with an absolute majority that they would uphold the original verdict. Except for Dumbledore, almost no one supported me, Blake said with a sad smile, his eyes starting to turn red. Will they let you leave? How is that possible? Black sneered and shook his head repeatedly. They wanted to arrest me on the spot and send me to a prison in the United States for temporary detention. Dumbledore used his personal guarantee to guarantee that after the prison in the UK is completed, he will continue to serve his sentence. Voldemort is dead anyway. It doesn't matter if he is resurrected 100 times. You can defeat him. Little Harry will be safe as long as he is in Hogwarts. I'm a bit redundant here. No, Blake. You are not the unnecessary one. It's their fault, not yours. Their heads are full of slugs and shit. Black's entire experience sounded particularly dreamy to Alexis. He really couldn't think of the reasons the group used to refute Dumbledore and what they used to prove Black's guilt. Uphold the original verdict? The original sentence was to convict Sirius Black of secretly leaking the hiding place of James and Lily to Voldemort, and following and supporting Voldemort to undermine the security of the wizarding world. What the hell kind of original verdict is this? Black felt guilty for introducing a traitor to act as a guarantor. He was in the mood to punish himself and had no objection to all the sentences. He was willing to go to Azkaban and suffer in order to repay his inner guilt for James. But this kind of fairy tale is an exaggeration, and they still uphold the original verdict? Alexis very much doubted that one day he himself would be identified as a Death Eater and imprisoned. It's okay, Black. From what I heard from Rufus, the International Federation of Wizards has been unwilling to approve our side's rebuilding of Azkaban. You're not going to be locked up. Blake shook his head. When did you get the news? When we left, they had officially passed the approval, and it is estimated that construction will begin soon. The new prison will be built according to the model of Gringotts underground vault, just under London. It will be guarded by dragons and auras, and will be directly managed by the International. The Wizards Federation sent people to station here. Alexis was speechless. What the hell kind of wizarding union is this? He stood up hastily and was about to leave. I'm going to find Dumbledore. This can't go on like this. Black, listen. If Dumbledore doesn't care, we are out of here. I won't just watch. Principal's office. I don't understand what you are still worried about. Professor McGonagall looked at the slow Dumbledore and asked angrily. Minerva, it's not that simple. Dumbledore raised his head, his wise eyes unable to conceal their tiredness. When I went to the International Federation of Wizards this time, I felt that there was a potential darkness hiding in the dark, trying to provoke a war. If we are prepared to go against the International Federation of Wizards and the Muggle government, then it will succeed. I suspect it's all part of a conspiracy. What did you experience in the International Confederation of Wizards? Mag asked with a frown. Dumbledore smacked his mouth, subconsciously opened the drawer with his palm, took out a candy, and put it in his mouth, narrowing his eyes slightly. They think I'm old, Minerva, and are ready to kick me out of the Wizengamot. What? McGonagall looked at Dumbledore with wide eyes, and the second half of the sentence that was about to be spoken was picked up by the good-hearted Phineas. Are they crazy? What are you waiting for, Dumbledore? I think the International Federation of Wizards has become a puppet of the Muggles. Even for the sake of the entire wizarding world, you have to stand up. McGonagall glanced at Phineas, who was jumping and shouting, and then turned to Dumbledore. Although what Mr. Black said is a bit radical, I think it makes sense. Dumbledore, we cannot sit still and wait for death. Dumbledore shook his head, and the candy in his mouth completely melted away. The sweet taste dissipated his fatigue slightly, and his spirit became slightly better. I'll take care of this. Besides, Minerva, I think it is a good move to join forces with the Muggle government to conduct a thorough cleanup. In the past few years, more and more wizards have fled to the Muggle world to hide after committing evil acts. Since we and the Muggle government work independently and let them go unpunished, this time may be a wake-up call for wizards who are preparing to commit crimes. How are you going to solve it? McGonagall is not that easy to fool. She and Dumbledore have known each other for many years, and there is no way they can let it go just because of a light. I will solve it. I will contact Secretary Rufus to participate in this cleanup operation and limit this operation to its proper scope instead of continuing to spread. Where is Sirius Black? What should he do? Phineas interjected. He may be a bastard, but he is innocent. I already have an idea. In this review, the actual situation is not that bad. Most people abstained from voting instead of opposing. Minerva, maybe there is something wrong with this whole thing, but I believe we can work it out, just like before. Maybe. McGonagall was not as optimistic as Dumbledore, but now that Dumbledore had made his decision, she still chose to support him. Even though it seems silly and naive. Chapter 188, Things Are Not What You Think. Dumbledore's decision soon became known to Alexis, which made him particularly angry. After jumping around and yelling at Dumbledore for being naive, Alexis decided to stick to his own ideas and prepare himself. Maybe even he didn't notice that he had changed a lot in just a few months. If he had followed his previous character, Alexis would have given up the idea after hearing about Dumbledore's decision, just like Dumbledore stopped him from getting involved in the Philosopher's Stone last time. But he didn't. Unknowingly, Alexis gradually began to learn what responsibility is. Without Dumbledore's support, he would be unable to mobilize most members of the Order of the Phoenix. All Alexis could rely on was Grindelwald's old team. Because of Dumbledore's incident, he wrote a letter to Grindelwald, complaining about Dumbledore's decision. Grindelwald wrote him a reply the next day. The letter did not express any opinion on this, but instead told him to buy him some more books. This made Alexis angry. How long has this been going on? You don't help or say anything, but you still have the time to study this? Alexis, who was almost furious, collected a large amount of exercise materials, which were as tall as a person, packed them up, and sent them back to Grindelwald. Time passed slowly in a tense atmosphere, and April arrived as scheduled. Alexis's nerves became tense, and he became restless, and contacted Lucius and Claire every day. Always be ready to resist. However, things did not develop as he thought. A large number of auras were scattered, and a famous werewolf and dark wizard was arrested, but nothing happened to Claire and the others. It is said that Byron even helped a team of auras capture a dark wizard hiding in the Muggle world in front of the Byron Hotel, and was commended for it. The Dark Wizard had repeatedly used the Imperious Curse to control others, seize and misappropriate other people's property, and relied on his magic to hide in the Muggle world and dominate. Not only were Claire and the others okay, but the people Alexis expected to capture Black and Lupin never showed up. Black still lives in Hogsmeade, right next door to Christie, and Lupin still teaches the students every day. This made Alexis a little confused. He was prepared to break the net, but what he waited for was that the prisoners who should have been arrested were arrested one after another. The cleanup operation had only been carried out for more than 10 days, and nearly 100 prisoners had been arrested in the UK alone. This spread to the whole world, and this number even directly exceeded the 1,000 mark. The immediate results were before our eyes. Newspapers were full of praise, and countless wizards raised their hands and feet in support. The reputation of the International Federation of Wizards and the Ministry of Magic in various places rose sharply, and Rufus also secured his position as Minister of Magic. Everything looks good. People are singing and dancing. Prisoners are arrested one after another. The credibility of the Ministry of Magic has been improved again, and everyone's trust has been won. Only Alexis felt awkward everywhere. He felt that he should have been deceived. Maybe it was Claire's people. Maybe it was the newspaper reports. Maybe it was the International Federation of Wizards. Anyway, someone always deceived him. Others who had the same doubts as him were Lucius Malfoy, Claire and Black. Claire, you need to give me an explanation. These were the last words of the letter Alexis sent yesterday. Claire's reply was brief. We are still investigating the specific situation, but the person responsible for the last operation has been locked up by us. This also doubts the authenticity of the information. Alexis shook her head, put down Claire's letter, and opened Lucius's letter. Compared with the brevity of Claire's letters, each reply from Lucius lasted for several pages, densely filled with his own analysis. This time is no exception. Alexis, if your source is reliable, I think the current situation still cannot explain anything. We still need to be prepared to deal with changes that may occur at any time. Alexis agreed with this statement. This situation, which was so different from his expectations and speculations, made Fraxus feel very uneasy. He couldn't just throw away all his previous preparations. I have received information that the actual situation of this operation is basically consistent with the content of the report. There is not much difference. The only difference is the number of people due to the delay of the newspaper. As far as the current situation is concerned, they have indeed not expanded the scope of the arrest. Alexis, we should continue to hold our ground. After an analysis, Lucius Barabara came to the conclusion of holding back for the time being. This didn't satisfy Alexis, but he couldn't think of any good solution, and could only agree. Time has entered May. The weather has begun to get hot, and corresponding to the hot weather, cleaning activities are in full swing. Compared with the frequent good news in April, the results they achieved in May were not that great. However, this is also normal. According to the International Federation of Wizards and the Ministry of Magic in various places, they carried out this operation precisely because in the past few decades, wizards have repeatedly committed evil and fled to the Muggle world to remain anonymous and hide their whereabouts. In other words, what they arrested were actually prisoners accumulated over the past few decades. The number of arrests has decreased now, which is normal. The trend of cleanup operations has passed, and relevant reports are rarely seen in newspapers. Unless another heinous person who has committed a shocking crime is arrested, the media will be interested. Alexis still maintained contact with Lucius and Claire, but he had become accustomed to the outside world, and was even a little numb. That's fine. Although there is a gap from what I had imagined before, things are developing in a good direction, right? Alexis comforted herself like this, and went to class on campus honestly. Time has come to May, and the courses for each grade have been basically completed. The next month or so will be review time. The application for adding pharmacy to the examination scope has also been approved. For this matter, Alexis even made a special trip to the British Ministry of Magic. After research, it was finally decided that starting from next year, pharmacy will be officially included in the exam, but not this year. When Alexis announced the news to class, the 5th grade wizards cheered. As the date for the ordinary wizard level exam approached, they were going crazy. Alexis heard that students from various colleges were applying to study at home, and some even collapsed due to too much pressure. Madame Pomfrey's place has been very busy since the time entered May. Students will want to get some stress relieving medicine from Madame Pomfrey, or just sleeping aids, even if they can let them sleep peacefully. Evening is good. Chapter 189. The final exam is approaching. Principal's office. Dumbledore seemed to be in a good mood. He was eating the special desserts from Felix's dessert shop, drinking the special drinks from Felix's dessert shop, and looking through the documents happily. As the final exams approached, he, the headmaster of Hogwarts, needed to shift more of his work focus to the campus. Fortunately, the matter has been basically resolved by him. The Wizengamot counselor who was given a large amount of love potion is currently lying in the Janus Sitch ward in St. Mungo's. A large amount of love potions and frequent imperious curses have completely washed his brain into a ball of mush. This poor congressman will probably be tired of leaving St. Mungo's in his lifetime. After finding out the crux of the problem, Dumbledore has submitted the application for a review of the Sirius Black case. It is estimated that the court will be held again after the final exam is over. Due to the cleaning operation, the Wizengamot has been a little busy recently, and their court cases have been scheduled until next year. Fortunately, he submitted it quickly enough. The scope and requirements of the pharmacy exam. Dumbledore was stunned, licked his fingers, flipped through the documents on the table, and started reading carefully. Every year when the final exam is approaching, each subject will submit an exam scope and exam requirements to Dumbledore. Of course, this does not mean that the examination content of each subject requires Dumbledore's consent before it can be carried out, but that the annual examinations are recorded. Among them, it is different starting from the 5th grade. The 5th grade will take the ordinary wizarding level examination, which is directly responsible for the examination administration. The principal has less influence on this matter than the teachers of each subject. Although the 6th grade exam is not handled by the examination authority, the assessment is usually very strict. All teachers and students will regard the 6th grade exam as a simulated advanced wizard level exam. As for the 7th grade, there will naturally be an advanced wizard level exam administered by the examination authority again. The report submitted by Alexis is about the scope and requirements of the pharmacy exam for grades 1 to 5. In fact, professors usually submit this report 1 week before the exam. It is rare for Alexis to submit it nearly 1 or 2 months in advance. After Dumbledore read it carefully, he felt that there was nothing wrong with it and took the report to the other side. Alexis didn't do anything outrageous or over the top. It was no different from other exams. The final exam is approaching, and it's not just the 5th year students who are nervous. The entire Hogwarts is filled with nervousness and anxiety. This sentiment is especially evident among first year students. The fun before class in the past disappeared unknowingly, and the little wizards imitated the senior students, frowning and studying hard while holding their textbooks. Alexis's careful laboratory animals interest group had to be temporarily suspended to allow them sufficient review time. Amidst the busyness and anxiety, June is coming. When the officials from the examination authority walked into Hogwarts carrying their leather bags, their anxious and suppressed emotions suddenly broke out. The timing is right. This will be the last lesson Alexis will teach the 5th grade, and the ordinary wizarding level examination will begin next week. Alexis walked into the classroom holding the lesson plan. The classroom was quiet, and he even heard suppressed crying. There were house prefects in his class, but their expressions were not relaxed. Even Slytherin's Gemma Farley had a tense face. It could be seen from her red eyes that she seemed to have just cried. Alexis looked around the classroom and sighed to herself. He originally wanted to attend class as normal, but now it seems that, unless he can steal the test content of this class and announce it to them one by one, these students will not be interested in listening to him, no matter what he talks about. They are like prisoners about to be executed, who have seen the executioner drink the bowl of emboldening wine, and their lives have officially entered the countdown. You all seem nervous. Alexis spoke. Because he didn't speak for a while, his voice sounded a little weird. He paused for a moment to let his throat adjust a little, and then continued. Is it because we saw officials from the examination administration arriving? Still no one answered. Just a small nod from Gabriel sitting in the front row. Then let's talk about the ordinary wizarding level examination. Of course, I will not forget the two of you. The advanced wizard level examination. Alexis pointed at the only two 7th year Hufflepuffs in the class and winked. This topic really aroused the students' interest. There was a brief commotion below, but it soon calmed down. What I taught you before. Check the exam content in previous years. How many people have done it? Raise your hands. There are a total of 13 5th grade students in his class, 6 6th grade students, and 2 7th grade students. The method he mentioned before is not only applicable to ordinary wizard level exams, but also to advanced wizard level exams. All 21 students raised their hands. The result pleased Alexis. Did you encounter any problems during this process? Gabriel, tell me. Gabriel is the prefect of Hufflepuff. He is a shy young man who often says he blushes. Gabriel stood up and licked his lips. After these 2 months of working in the Care for Experimental Animals interest group, he and Alexis had gradually become familiar with each other, and they were no longer as curious, admiring and fearful as before. Sir, we are not sure that the exam questions we can find are useful, which makes us always doubtful when reviewing according to the way you teach. Alexis nodded and asked him to sit down, then nodded to a Slytherin. Magic is constantly moving forward. These subjects are constantly improving, and we don't know which answers are still applicable today. With the examples of these two people, other students also stood up to speak, and soon, various questions were asked. After the last student sat down, Alexis summarized a little and asked any more. A 7th grader raised his hand. Sir, I would like to know what will happen if you fail the exam. Alexis nodded, indicating to him to calm down, and began to answer each question one by one. In fact, the questions they asked were summarized into 2 questions. First, they had doubts about past exam exercises or this method of review. Second, they feel they don't have enough time. Actually, there is no need for you to think so. Alexis wrote down these 2 questions, pointed to the first one and said, I'm not asking you to find this year's real exam questions from past exam exercises. Since the 4 Great Deans founded Hogwarts in 990 AD, it has gone through more than 1,000 years of history. The history of the ordinary wizard level examination and the advanced wizard level examination is no longer testable. In such a long time, there have been countless exam questions. If I wrote them down, they would be thicker than your textbooks. It is unrealistic to review them all. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 190, Ordinary Wizard Level Examination. And because of the differences between ancient and modern times, many answers that were considered correct in the past are now wrong. This point has just been mentioned by some students. Therefore, I'll let you look at the past exam exercises, mainly to let you learn the thinking of the exercises. Although there is a lot of content in the exam, the thinking of the exam is fixed. The exam content in the magic class is usually the dictation of the characteristics and precautions of some frequently used magic spells, while the practical exam is about casting magic spells. The written test part of the transfiguration class usually involves writing down the definition and precautions of a certain transformation related spell. The practical exam usually requires candidates to transform something into another form. Herbalism is a bit more difficult. The written test usually focuses on a certain plant that you have studied, and the practical test content is the practical courses that you have definitely studied. Because herbalism has certain dangers, the test content usually does not hook on too dangerous a plant. Alexis listed the test characteristics of each subject one by one, and finally knocked on the desk. These are the key review contents that you need to summarize during review. The probability of them appearing in the exam is much higher than other parts. Of course, I have said before that this method is a way to cope with the exam. It is best for you to review all the courses. As for feeling that there is not enough time, this problem is actually an unsolvable problem. Alexis shrugged. When you are unwilling to do something, or are unwilling to face something, no matter how long you are given to prepare, you still feel you don't have enough time. And another very important part that affects test scores is your self-confidence. If two candidates have similar review levels, one is confident and the other is anxious, their ability to show off during the exam will be at least one rating worse. Hogwarts test scores are not expressed in scores, but in terms of O, E, A, P, D, and T, representing 6 levels from excellent to extremely poor. Among them, A means passing. In order to continue to take the advanced wizarding level examination, students must at least get an E rating in the corresponding subject in the ordinary wizarding level examination. As for the O excellent evaluation, except for some top academics or students who are really interested in a certain subject, they usually don't expect this result. Alexis talked about the importance of mentality again and finally asked how many students have taken care of magical creatures. The students looked at each other, wondering why the topic suddenly turned to this, but a few students still raised their hands. Alexis nodded with satisfaction. Very good. I have good news for you. As commissioned by Professor Sylvanus Kettleburn, and subject to approval, I will temporarily act as your care of magical creatures examiner. Classmates, see you in the examination room. Alexis' timing was very good, and she finished all the lectures, just as get out of class was about to end. The students left the classroom worriedly, and the entire Hogwarts main building fell into a state of depression, as if a powder keg was about to explode at any time. Alexis did not lie. Yesterday, he suddenly received a request from Professor Sylvanus Kettleburn to take the exam on his behalf. Professor Sylvanus Kettleburn was the care of magical creatures teacher, and Alexis had a good relationship with him. When he was in school, Alexis was the first to study plants. At that time, he had not yet conducted research on animals, but he had already shown enough interest. And Professor Sylvanus Kettleburn himself is not an honest person. It is strange that a person who has left checking records more than 60 times can be an honest person. His love for magical animals surprised everyone, and his most proud disciple was the summoner named Newt Scamander. Because of his reckless character, Professor Sylvanus Kettleburn suffered a lot, and because of this character, he was left with only one arm and half a leg. But that didn't quench his love for magical creatures, so he couldn't conduct the exams. In fact, this matter has something to do with Alexis. The dragon egg he gave to Hagrid hatched into a small Chinese fire dragon. Hagrid had already named the little Charmander Bull when it was still in egg form. When the bull hatched, Hagrid was so happy. As a fellow fan who shares Hagrid's crazy love for magical animals, Professor Sylvanus and Hagrid became good friends. Because of their interests, Hagrid couldn't help but tell Professor Sylvanus the news. Professor Sylvanus danced with excitement. After receiving the news, he made an appointment with Hagrid to take advantage of the night to visit the new student Kyu. In order to hide the ball from others, Hagrid placed the ball in the Forbidden Forest and asked the horse people to help take care of it. Everything would have been fine, but it just so happened that the date Professor Sylvanus chose was the day of the full moon. The Centaur tribe was busy fighting with the manic werewolves, and the elderly Professor Sylvanus was almost attacked by an unknown creature and was seriously injured. Thanks to Alexis giving Hagrid a wand, Hagrid used it to save the poor old man. The whole of Hogwarts knew that Professor Sylvanus often went into the Forbidden Forest. As a madman who could leave himself with only half a leg and an arm, Dumbledore was very fond of Sylvanus. There was no doubt about the severity of Professor Nuss's injuries. In this way, the responsibility of taking the exam to protect magical creatures fell on Alexis. On Monday, the Ordinary Wizard level examination officially began. As usual, the Ordinary Wizard level exam will last for 2 weeks, with each subject lasting 1 day, with the written part in the morning and the practical part in the afternoon. The exam on Monday is charms. In addition to the officials of the examination authority, Professor Flitwick also presided over the examination. Although Flitwick is short, he is very respected by teachers and students. Even Slytherin students have special respect for Flitwick. Today he was dressed particularly grandly, and his unkempt beard was even neatly combed. Flitwick had a serious look on his face, looking as if he too was about to take an exam. Hesitation. The Ordinary Wizard level examination was conducted in a separate classroom, and other relevant personnel were not allowed to enter or exit here. Therefore, he did not meet anyone else along the way. At noon, the written examination ended, and the 5th grade students walked into the restaurant wiltingly, as if they had just experienced a severe torture. Students from other grades seemed to feel the pressure. The entire restaurant was silent, except for the occasional sound of forks clashing. Harry sat with Ron and Hermione. The three of them ate lunch and communicated with each other with their eyes. Affected by the Ordinary Wizard level examination, these three little guys were also very nervous. When a 5th grade student sitting not far from them couldn't help but sob in a low voice, the depressing atmosphere was detonated, and the originally quiet restaurant immediately became noisy. Some acquaintances or good friends from the same school stood up to comfort him, and then more and more students began to cry. It's terrible. Ron looked at a crying Gryffindor with lingering fear. I would rather stay with spiders. Harry and Hermione nodded in agreement. I heard that Mr. Alexis will also be conducting an exam. Hermione whispered. Harry and Ron both looked at the teacher's chair. They found that Professor Flitwick, who always smiled, was slicing the sausages on the plate with a straight face. Whenever students passed by him, they would subconsciously go away. It's like Flitwick has his own repulsive magnetic field. This performance made the two of them tremble. Don't think so much. When they finish the exam, it will be our turn, Hermione said, wiping her mouth and standing up. I'm done eating. I plan to go to the library to review in the afternoon. Do you want to come? Chapter 191. Lupin is very nervous. What happened in the restaurant at noon was just an interlude, and the exam continued in the afternoon. In the evening, the charms exam was officially completed. The atmosphere in the restaurant was not as depressing as it was at noon. Probably because after taking the exam for a day, the students had a clear understanding of their abilities, and they already knew whether they could pass the Ordinary Wizard level exam. No one cried in the restaurant. Although it was not as bustling as in the past, there were still many students who had just passed the exam gathered together and discussed in low voices the contents of the charms exam that had just passed. This is a good sign. Because of the unknown, they are afraid. When they have experienced the charms exam and have some understanding of the Ordinary Wizard level exam, this fear will gradually subside. When the fear dissipates, they can exert their own strength and get the results they deserve. Test on Transfiguration on Tuesday. Among all subjects, Transfiguration is a relatively difficult subject. Perhaps it is because of this that students are particularly afraid of Professor McGonagall, the teacher of Transfiguration. Even Alexis is not exempt from this. Although his transfiguration was not perfect, it was only so-so. Therefore, he had special respect for Professor McGonagall. After the course was finished, the students howled. Amidst the wailing, a few beaming students stood out. As dinner was coming to an end, they gathered at the teacher's table and approached Horcruxes. "Sir, it's true. It's true." One student could not suppress his joy and cheered as he approached. "Yes, sir, the method you taught really works." Another student followed. "The content of the written test this morning is animagus. Sir, you told us about it in class. The content of our test is the same as what you told us." Alexis recognized that these students happened to be students taking his pharmacy course. Not long after school started, he saw the 5th graders being anxious about reviewing for the ordinary wizard level exam. So for the first time he proposed to use the method of reviewing past exam exercises to carry out targeted review. At that time, he mentioned that the content of his transfiguration exam was animagus. At that time, the students even exclaimed, lamenting that the exam content was too difficult. Alexis responded with a smile and encouraged the students before letting them go back to rest. "I have a test on herbal medicine tomorrow." When the 3rd exam day came, Alexis discovered one thing. The most nervous people were not the students. They had passed the nervous period, and they were aware of their own strength, and they could gradually treat ordinary wizards calmly. The grade exam is over. The most nervous one is Lupin. Alexis did the math and realized that tomorrow was the defense against the dark arts exam. Lupin took over Quirrell's class and became the defense against the dark arts teacher. In other words, the 5th grade students have already experienced at least 3 teachers. Each teacher has different teaching ideas, teaching concepts, and focuses. Frequent changes of teachers will cause great trouble to students. Similar troubles are also plaguing Lupin. Lupin is very aware of the importance of the ordinary wizarding level examination to students, and many career options require scores in the defense against the dark arts class, which means that, as long as he is a little more strict, a large number of students will be because of him. They are unable to choose a career of their choice, such as aura, based on the judgment criteria. And if his requirements were relaxed, it would most likely harm the students, such as those who aspired to become auras. Since the cleanup operation began to achieve remarkable results, the aura profession has been quickly sanctified, and more students hope to become an aura. According to the new head of Aura Command, Gadwin Roberts, they have received thousands of applications. To join the aura ranks. This forced him to repeatedly raise the selection qualification requirements, but he still received a lot of looks every day. "This situation has never happened before." This flattered Mr. Gadwin a little. In the interview, he said that he would definitely lead the Aura Command well, fight crime with all his strength, and live up to everyone's trust in them. Valley. Alexis glanced at Lupin not far away. The sausage on Lupin's plate had almost been chopped into mincemeat. He had just pulled a piece of toast into that shape 10 minutes ago. "Lupin." Alexis put down her knife and fork and called out quietly. Lupin seemed to be frightened and almost jumped out of his chair. "Hey, man, take it easy." Alexis walked over and tapped him on the shoulder. "How about we go have a drink at the Hog's Head?" Lupin forced a smile on his pale face and shook his head. "No, we have an exam tomorrow. I mean, I have to preside over the exam tomorrow. Thank you, no." Alexis hooked her arms around his neck, leaned closer and smiled. "Okay then, let's go to the office and talk." Lupin hesitated for a moment, then stood up and followed Alexis out of the restaurant. The 3 Harrys at the Gryffindor table also noticed the movement at the teacher's table. Seeing Alexis and Lupin leaving one after another, they got together again. "What happened? Why are Professor Lupin and Mr. Alexis gone?" I noticed that Professor Lupin didn't seem to have eaten anything at all. Harry and Hermione chatted quietly, then both looked at Ron. Ron's mouth was full of food, and he looked up at his 2 friends with a blank look on his face. "What's wrong? What happened?" "Professor Lupin looks nervous. Something may have happened," Hermione said, pointing to the 2 empty seats at the teacher's desk. Ron struggled to swallow the food, choking and rolling his eyes. Fortunately, Hermione handed him a glass of juice. He took it, drank most of it, and then looked at Hermione gratefully. Many career choices have requirements for defense against the dark arts. Defense against the dark arts is a very important subject, and it is inevitable that Mr. Lupin will be nervous. Besides, he lowered his voice, looked around, and said mysteriously, "I heard that Voldemort once asked to stay at Hogwarts as a professor of defense against the dark arts after graduation, but was rejected by Principal Dumbledore. Refused. So he put a curse on the position. No one could stay in the position for a full academic year." "Who did you hear?" Hermione asked, distrust written all over her face. "You see, Quirrell didn't even make it to Christmas after he took office, did he?" Ron said matter-of-factly, "That's because he was controlled by Voldemort. Voldemort controlled Quirrell to sneak into Hogwarts and steal the Sorcerer's Stone. With Voldemort's fall again, the media dug it out and reported it extensively. This matter has become known to the world. But he was hired by Principal Dumbledore as a defense against the dark arts professor during the summer vacation, and then he met Voldemort," Ron argued. Chapter 192, Defense Against the Dark Arts Examination. The argument between Harry and Alexis was unknown. He was currently talking to Lupin in the office. Lupin was really nervous. At this time, there was no one else in the room except him and Alexis, and Lupin couldn't pretend anymore. He held his whole body in the chair and told Alexis his worries with a sullen expression. The chair was newly purchased by Alexis. It is purely handmade. The texture of the reddish brown wood is clearly visible. The base and backrest are padded. It is soft when you sit on it. Just like a sofa, it can effectively relieve fatigue and make people not want to get up at all. "Alexis, I don't really realize it until now, how excruciating this is." Lupin took a big gulp of wine and continued. "The ordinary wizarding level examination tests not only the students, but also us." He had promised not to drink, but he had forgotten about it just 5 minutes after entering the office. "I heard." He changed his position and continued to sit in his chair. "The content of this exam may be the unforgivable curse." Alexis paused, pulled out the cork, took a sip of mead, and looked at Lupin in surprise. "Real or fake?" "Really?" Lupin nodded. "The exam is tomorrow. I only heard about it today. I heard it was because of what happened to us that night." Lupin pointed to the calendar on the table. This was the calendar from 1992. The one from 1991 had been thrown into the trash can by Alexis. Because both sides used a large number of unforgivable curses that night, it made people in the Ministry of Magic realize that unforgivable curses cannot be shelved. If used properly, they can bring good results. Alexis still didn't believe it. "Is this Rufus' decision?" Lupin shook his head. "I don't know. Maybe it is. Maybe it's not. I heard that, since the cleaning operation started in April, Rufus has only been back home 3 times in total, and he is so busy that he doesn't even bother to eat. He may not know this kind of thing." Alexis nodded. This kind of thinking is in line with Alexis's understanding of magic. As early as the first lesson he gave to the students, he said that there are no good or bad magic spells. What distinguishes good from bad is the wizard who uses the magic spell. But even he felt that doing so seemed a bit too radical at this time. Let's not talk about the fact that the students have never been exposed to the unforgivable curse. Let's talk about the purpose of doing this. Is this to cultivate a large number of wizards who will swagger through the market with Avada chewing the big melon? You must know that the most important profession for defense against the dark arts exams is aura. In fact, most students who participate in and are determined to achieve good results in the defense against the dark arts exams choose auras as their first career choice. Of course, auras need to be familiar with the unforgivable curse, but there is no need to use this as a criterion, right? Alexis thought this was going a little too far. But as Lupin said, the ordinary wizarding level examination is a matter of the examination authority. Rufus was busy with the cleaning operation, and he might have forgotten about the ordinary wizarding level examination. Rufus is obviously not to blame. The new head of the Aura Command, Mr. Gadwin, has little to do with this matter. The Aura Department and the Examination Administration are completely different departments. Alexis could only blame the exam administration's brain twitching. Lupin is gone. Whether Alexis' persuasion worked or not is unknown. Anyway, Lupin was so drunk that he couldn't walk in a straight line. When he left the next day, the defense against the dark arts exam began. At noon, Alexis came to the restaurant early to wait for Lupin. When he saw Lupin coming out, he quickly pulled Lupin over. "How's it going? Did you really take the unforgivable curse?" Lupin shook his head. It might be because he drank too much yesterday, or it might be because he was too nervous. His face looked dull. "No, the test is about the characteristics of werewolves and the differences between werewolves and wizards." Alexis was startled and patted Lupin's shoulder lightly. "I'm fine." Lupin pulled out a smile that was even uglier than crying. "In any case, just don't take the unforgivable curse test." After finishing the defense against the dark arts class, it's now Thursday. After taking the ancient runes test tomorrow, the candidates will have a 2-day weekend holiday. There is nothing much to say about runes. It is still a cliché test content. The written test tests the translation of runes, while the practical test tests the combination of runes. After finishing the ancient runes test, the students breathed a sigh of relief. They have 2 days off, which they can use to relieve tension, relax, or review content for next week's exam. The ordinary wizard level exam lasted for 2 weeks, and was already halfway through. As long as they persisted for 1 more week, this torture would be over. They were relaxed, but the students in other grades were in danger. After the ordinary wizard level exam is over, it will be the final exam for each grade. In other words, they will have the final exam in 1 week. I really hope that the ordinary wizarding level examination will continue like this. Ron complained softly while sitting in the library. "Oh my god, why don't the ordinary wizarding level examination last a whole year?" His complaint drew a burst of agreement, and several young wizards who also came to the library to review, whether they knew him or not, nodded in agreement. Then, Ron received a scolding from Mrs. Pince. Ron didn't dare to reply, so he could only curl his lips and continue to review with a thin copy of magic, potions, and botany. There are many students who come to the library to review pharmacy, especially the 3rd and 4th grade students. They are different from first year freshmen. They have already gone through several final exams and have certain experience. However, the pharmacy course is new this year, and it is completely different from other subjects, from content to ideas, and from their previous studies. The subjects are all different. They couldn't find the pattern at all, so they could only hold the textbook with a grimace and immerse themselves in reading. At the same time, they secretly resented, "What did I do to take this elective course in the first place? Why should we take this course?" Ron sighed again. This is simply too difficult. His emotion was once again recognized by the little wizards around him. Some even looked up at Ron and recognized him from his distinctive red hair. He was a boy from the Weasley family. They made up their mind to go out soon. "Finally, I want to get to know this guy. He literally spoke to us. Mr. Weasley." Mrs. Pince's voice came from above, making Ron shudder. "If you make any noise again, please get out." Ron shrank his neck like a quail and nodded helplessly. "Okay, I understand, Mrs. Pince." Mrs. Pince snorted and pointed at his mouth. Ron immediately made a zipper gesture and immersed himself in reading. Mrs. Pinksy was then satisfied and scanned the other little wizards around her. Seeing that everyone remained quiet, she returned to her seat. She was absolutely horrible. Ron lay down and whispered in Harry's ear, more terrifying than Professor Snape. Just as Harry was about to answer, his expression changed slightly, as if he realized something. "Mr. Weasley." Mrs. Pince's voice sounded. Chapter 193, Potions Examination. After the weekend, a new week came, and the ordinary wizard level examination continued. Unfortunately, the first day they had to take the potions test. All day Monday, Alexis witnessed Snape with a straight face and a serious look on his face. It was also at this time that he realized that Snape did not suffer from facial paralysis and that he could make expressions. In the evening, during mealtime, Alexis received unexpected news. The content of the potions exam is quite unusual. It does not examine the preparation of potions or the formula of a certain potion as in previous years. The content of the written test for this exam turned out to be, talk about the difference between potions and muggle biomedicine. As for the practical exam, it is even more outrageous. The exam question is actually a speech. Please try to explain the relationship between potions and muggle biomedicine, or try to analyze the principles of potions. Alexis finally understood why Snape had a dark face all day long. What kind of topic is this? Why do the written test questions sound so similar to the homework he left for his students in the first class? There are also practical exams. What kind of practice is this? Speech practice. The key is that this test is about potions, not speech. Listen to this question. The first one. Please try to explain the relationship between potions and Muggle biomedicine. Alexis was able to answer thanks to her knowledge of subjects in the Muggle world. As for the second one, try to analyze the principles of potions medicine. Alexis glanced at Snape sympathetically, earning a snort in return. He was almost doubtful. What idiot came up with this question? How dare you do this? In today's wizarding world, except for masters of potions like Dumbledore who basically don't know how to take action, and except for weird potions researchers like Alexis, in terms of potions attainments, Snape dares to say that he is second, and no one dares to claim that he is second. First. But even Snape, Alexis didn't believe he could answer this question. The scope of this question is so huge that, except for old guys like Nicolame, who have lived for hundreds of years, it would be impossible for a normal person to answer it in their lifetime. Because potions is the oldest discipline, like charms and transfiguration, and other defense against dark arts courses are derivatives of the three of them. The ancient science of potions has developed over a long period of time, and there are too many recipes. As far as Alexis knows, there is no capable person who dares to claim that he knows all the potion recipes. Not even the Nurmengard collection plus Hogwarts library has collected all these recipes. How can I answer this question if I can't even read the entire recipe? As expected, after the exam ended in the afternoon, the restaurant was once again filled with the laments of 5th graders. They feel that this is torturing them, testing them with questions that even the professor cannot answer correctly. Humph. Snape angrily stood up and left in the middle of dinner. When he passed Alexis, he snorted deliberately, making Alexis dumbfounded. On Tuesday, Alexis walked into the exam room fully dressed. Today's subject is care of magical creatures. Two officials from the examination authority arrived shortly after Alexis entered the venue. The two of them showed great enthusiasm towards Alexis. After exchanging pleasantries, the candidates began to arrive one after another. Let us start. One officer looked at his pocket watch and whispered. Alexis nodded, took the test paper, and handed it out, leaving one for herself. After the exam started, Alexis opened the test paper, and then his eyes widened. Please briefly talk about the protection measures for air-protected animals in the Muggle world that can be used as a reference for the protection of magical animals, and try to discuss and provide evidence. Please provide at least 3 evidences. For the parts beyond 3, 5 will receive an E evaluation, and 7 will receive an O evaluation. Those with more than 7 items can get an O+ evaluation. Alexis looked up at the exam room. Sure enough, the candidates were just as he thought. They raised their heads with blank expressions and looked at him and the two officials from the examination administration eagerly. Alexis turned her head and looked at the examination administration official beside her. The official smiled back. You smile like shit. What is this topic? Are you afraid that you are not going to heaven? Alexis coughed dryly and put down the test paper. Many students have no idea about rare and protected animals in the Muggle world. They have not even heard of the term rare and protected animals. Alexis reminded. The official continued to smile back, making Alexis want to rip his face off, throw it to the ground, and stomp on it. This is not part of the care of magical creatures course. Alexis raised her voice slightly. This made all the candidates look over. Seeing that Alexis was angry, the officials did not dare to neglect him. At this time, Alexis was still the hero who defeated and killed Voldemort head on, and they did not dare to ignore Alexis. Mr. Alexis, we don't know why such a question came up. Please forgive me. The two officials said this with apologetic smiles on their faces. Alexis looked at the two of them deeply, stood up and walked towards the door. That's nothing to say. After the exam is over, I will go to Rufus in person to find out more about this matter and see if he knows that the exam authority will ask questions like this. If he knew and agreed to it, I have nothing to say. If he didn't know, Alexis drawled, turning his head when the two officials looked nervous. I have been entrusted by someone to preside over the examination for the protection of magical creatures. The judging criteria for this examination will be determined by me. Are you overstepping your authority by attaching rating criteria to the questions? The two officials looked at each other, stood up and bent down in front of Alexis. Sir, it's like this. Alexis waved her hands, not wanting to listen to their nonsense. Remove the judging criteria and let me set them. Is it okay or not? The two of them stood in front of Alexis in embarrassment, not daring to speak for a long time. It seems like it's not working anymore. Alexis' calm voice came. Then I'll go find Rufus now and ask him clearly. With that said, he opened the door and walked out. Hey, Mr. Alexis. The two were anxious and quickly stopped Alexis. We need to ask for permission on this matter, but the exam has already started. Look, Alexis walked away. Then it seems that it still won't work. Seeing that Alexis was serious, the two of them were completely anxious. They quickly ran up to Alexis and stopped him. I'm going to ask for permission right now. Do you think this is okay? Another official said cautiously. We really can't make the decision on this kind of thing. Please give us some time. We'll go ask for instructions right away, and we'll give an answer as soon as possible. Do you think that's okay? Alexis stared at the two for a moment, then nodded silently. Show me the exam questions for this afternoon. Alexis stopped the two people who were turning to leave and spoke. The two of them froze, feeling a bad feeling. Chapter 194, Weird Exam Questions. Alexis also had a bad premonition, and his premonition soon came true. The questions for the afternoon practical exam were quickly brought. When he opened them, Alexis almost spat a mouthful of blood into the face of the official opposite. 1. Select food suitable for the recovering unicorn from a pile of food and successfully feed it. Unicorns are vegetarian animals, and only those with holy souls may be allowed to get close to them. Alexis felt that this question was not screening students who were paying attention in class, but screening the Holy Spirit. Anyway, Alexis and Lupin have been in the Forbidden Forest for so long, but they have not been able to successfully feed the unicorns as far as he knew. Hagrid was the only person he knew who claimed to have fed a unicorn, and the evidence was the hair the unicorn gave him in return. 2. Feed the moon crazy beast. The moon crazy beast is a very timid animal that only crawls out of its hole when the moon is full. Alexis did the math. Great. Today is only the 6th day of the lunar month. There are still 9 days until the full moon. This is not an exam at all. This is to embarrass the candidates and make magical animals behave contrary to their habits. 3. Find the deformed lizard from a large group of lizards. Probably only this question is normal point as for the subsequent identifying XXX and feeding XXX. Alexis no longer wanted to read it. Now he was very sure that the person who asked the question didn't know anything about magical animals at all. The person who asked the question probably just took a random book, turned to a random page, saw the name of a random magical animal, and then started to make assumptions. Ask questions. Not to mention that it is also mixed with topics involving common animals. Alexis was very sure that if these questions were shown to Newt Archdruid, he would rush into the question giver's office with his precious box, drag him into the box, and let him take a good look at it. What are magical animals? Poor Newt. It's a good thing Newt didn't see these questions. He would have been so angry that his brain would bleed. Reprint them all. These can't be used. Alexis threw the test paper back to the official and said loudly, this is an exam for the protection of magical animals. Magical animals. Not every animal can be called a magical animal. If you don't know what magical animals are, go back and go to class. Or I can introduce you to a master of magical animals. How about Senior Newt? I'm quite familiar with her. You can try to test him with these shabby questions and see how his winged demon and Zuao agrees or not. The official was so frightened that he quickly grabbed the test paper and apologized repeatedly, then turned around to catch up with his colleague and went to report to the computer. Who is your damn superior? Tell me his home address and inform him that I will visit his home after the exam is over. Alexis shouted from the back. After saying that, he shook his head and walked into the classroom. Everyone stop it first. Alexis clapped her hands. There is an error or omission in the exam question. Stop it first. Stop answering the question. We are already communicating with the examination administration and will change the questions for you soon. The test papers in your hands are invalid. The candidates looked at each other, then let out a suppressed cheer. They've really suffered enough. Since last week, the exam questions have become more and more strange, and I haven't passed them normally. They just want to pass the ordinary wizard level exam. Why is it so difficult? Officials soon returned with new exam questions. After apologizing to Alexis, the two of them quickly distributed the test papers without Alexis having to do anything. This made Alexis very doubtful whether they had prepared 2 sets of test papers a long time ago. Otherwise, how could it have happened so quickly? Alexis took a test paper and looked at it. The questions this time were quite normal. Please discuss the types of fire dragons and discuss their living habits, origin, etc. Although this workload is huge, it is still a serious topic. As for the practical exam in the afternoon, the topic was also changed from the weird topic to try to get close to the hippogriff and pet it. The hippogriff is a very proud and bad-tempered magical animal. If you want to get close to it, you must first show it that you are not a threat. Valley. Usually the correct approach is to bow to the hippogriff first, express respect, and wait for its response. During this process, you must always maintain eye contact with it and cannot look around. Considered impolite. Only when you get permission can you gradually get closer. Hippogriffs can be tamed, but this is usually done by experienced wizards. There is a hippogriff in Hogwarts, which has been raised by Hagrid. Hagrid said it was called Buckbeak. Unfortunately, Alexis did not win the admiration of Mr. Buckbeak, the hippogriff. According to Hagrid, Alexis's gaze was too aggressive, as if he was considering skinning and ripping him apart. Same. During the few times Alexis came into contact with Buckbeak, Alexis was almost bitten by Buckbeak each time. He could easily defeat, or even kill Buckbeak, but whenever he had this thought, and looked at Hagrid who was looking at him helplessly, he had no choice but to accept his fate. Although this question is somewhat dangerous, and subsequent candidates may annoy Buckbeak due to the frequent appearance of strangers, it is still within the scope of a normal question. Besides, with him and Hagrid watching, there shouldn't be any problems. Alexis nodded and said nothing more. Because of the delay in changing the questions, the end time of their morning exam was naturally postponed by half an hour. When the candidates finally finished the exam and came to the restaurant, students from other grades cast inquiring glances. Soon, word spread among the candidates about what Alexis did in the exam room. Alexis quickly finished her lunch as usual, got up and went to the edge of the Forbidden Forest to find Hagrid. Theoretically speaking, the ownership of Buckbeak does not belong to Hagrid. The examination administration can take Buckbeak away at any time and use it as a tool for the examination. It is even legal for them to dissect Buckbeak on the spot if they want. But Alexis wouldn't do that. Buckbeak has been fed by Hagrid for a long time. With Hagrid's love for animals, Buckbeak is no longer just a magical animal in Hagrid's eyes. Like Fang, this is Hagrid's friend. In order to avoid an accident that would result in Hagrid's friend being executed, Alexis felt it necessary to say hello to Hagrid in advance. You mean to ask Buckbeak to take the care of magical creatures exam? Hagrid happened to be feeding Buckbeak when Alexis came to see him. Hagrid confirmed after listening to Alexis' story. Yes. Alexis stood far away and looked at Buckbeak, who was also looking at him. In order to ensure that nothing happens, I think you'd better communicate with this grumpy old man first. Harm a student, and it could be punishable by death. Buckbeak seemed to understand what Alexis was saying. He glared at his hooves dissatisfiedly and opened his mouth wide in the direction of Alexis, as if he wanted to stuff Alexis' head into his mouth. Alexis gave Buckbeak a look of contempt in return, then turned to Hagrid and said, "If it doesn't work, let me know as soon as possible. Or you can supervise the exam with me in the afternoon." Really? Hagrid looked a little excited. I mean, yes, of course. Thank you, Alexis. Hagrid thanked him incoherently. Alexis could understand Hagrid's mood. Hagrid has not been living a happy life since he was framed by Voldemort, and the fact that he is half giant, which is easy to see, has caused him to be reviled and ostracized. Fortunately, the atmosphere in Hogwarts is good. Except for the occasional students who cast disdainful glances at him, most teachers and students will not have any different views on him. If Dumbledore didn't leave him at Hogwarts to guard the Forbidden Forest, Hagrid would probably have to go looking for the giant tribe. And a half-giant like him would also be ostracized in the giant tribe, and he might even be killed as food in the winter, when food was scarce. Therefore, Hagrid has always been grateful to Hogwarts, to Dumbledore, and to those who helped him, and he hopes that he can do something in return. Chapter 195, Buckbeak. In the afternoon, the practical examination on care of magical creatures was held at the edge of the Forbidden Forest. This drew a crowd of onlookers to watch. Hagrid stood in the middle of the field holding Buckbeak. He kept stroking Buckbeak with one hand and soothing him. Suddenly there were so many people making noises and pointing at him, which made him feel very sad. Buckbeak was in a bad mood. It kept rubbing its neck against Hagrid, then raised its head and opened its mouth toward the crowd, as if it wanted to swallow everyone in one bite. Its two wings were also flapping slightly, and its hind hooves were tapping the ground uneasily. The candidates who were about to start the exam were a little scared when they looked at Buckbeak, who was exuding a manic aura around them. They looked at each other, and no one wanted to be the first to step forward and try. Alexis pulled two officials from the examination authority and stood a little further away. Buckbeak had already warned him once. If he dared to get close again, Buckbeak would rush up and bite him regardless. "Prefect, please set an example first," Alexis said, holding the list. "This is actually a score record sheet. It will record the plus and minus points in real time when the candidate takes the exam, and then give a score. It can be said that the results of the practical examination are released on the spot after the test. Gemma Farley, you come first. Pinello Crevitt, get ready." Gemma Farley clenched her fists and walked out of the crowd silently. "Go on, slowly, be patient." Alexis saw that the little girl was nervous and reassured. "Hagrid and I are right next to it. It won't hurt you. Hagrid should be nearby. If I get close, it will only make things more complicated," Alexis added silently in his mind. Gemma Farley nodded and gathered her courage to approach Buckbeak. She seemed to really receive encouragement from Alexis. After all, Alexis was the one who defeated Voldemort head on. He said it was okay. It should be okay. Gemma Farley cleared away the messy thoughts in her heart and silently recalled the knowledge about the hippogriff she had learned in class. She first walked 10 meters away from Buckbeak and stopped. The distance was actually close enough, and her approach caught Buckbeak's attention. He no longer looked at the other people around him, but stared intently at Gemma Farley, and then opened his mouth at her. Gemma Farley glanced back at Alexis uneasily, turned her head, and bowed to Buckbeak. Buckbeak's mouth slowly closed, his restless hoof stopped digging the earth, and he looked at Gemma Farley intently. Gemma Farley was so nervous that her palms were sweating. She seemed to be under a petrification spell. She stood motionless, not even daring to blink. Gradually, the noise around them became quiet, and everyone looked at Gemma Farley and Buckbeak in the field. They held their breath for fear of disturbing either of them. Buckbeak slowly lowered his head, raised it again, and rubbed Hagrid next to him. Hagrid smiled happily, stroking Buckbeak with one hand, and quietly waving to Gemma Farley with the other hand. "Come here, Buckbeak accepts your respect." Gemma Farley breathed a sigh of relief, and rushed over at a trot. Hagrid's expression changed. Alexis outside the court was about to open her mouth, when she saw Buckbeak, who had just become docile, suddenly turned his head, and stared directly at Gemma Farley. Gemma Farley stopped at her feet, her whole body stiff. Buckbeak spread his wings, and rushed towards her. "Leave now," Hagrid yelled at Gemma Farley, while holding Buckbeak in his arms, trying to comfort him. He did not forget Alexis' warning at noon, that Buckbeak would most likely be executed if any student was injured. Gemma Farley seemed to be frightened and stood motionless. Alexis pushed aside the two trembling officials, rushed into the field, and hugged Gemma Farley before Buckbeak's raised hoof fell, appearing on the sidelines amidst the exclamations of the crowd. Buckbeak was hugged by Hagrid. He seemed a little reluctant, and stretched his neck to reach the direction of Gemma Farley. There is the guy it hates the most. It was just a little bit close to crushing that annoying guy's head. Thank you, Gemma Farley was shaking. She was terrified. Alexis let go of Gemma Farley and said nothing, just patted her on the shoulder and told her to leave. Turning his head, He looked at the two examination administration officials angrily. If a student is injured, is your examination administration responsible? What? The two grew their mouths. This bad question is from you. Damn it. I've had enough of you. Alexis waved his hands a little irritably. Now, either I change the question temporarily to reduce the risk, or I continue to keep this question while the students are taking the exam. If you are injured, your examination administration will be responsible for everything. Besides, don't think about blaming Buckbeak, that hippogriff. Can't you bully him into speaking? Mr. Alexis, this is against the rules. One official said something, and was immediately stared at by Horcruxes, who dared not continue. His colleague continued. How about we ask for instructions again? Shut up. Alexis interrupted him. There is no need to ask for instructions. Either do as I say, or you will be responsible. Also, what is the name of the person in charge of your examination administration? I really want to see what kind of cerebral palsy it is that can make a good ordinary wizard level examination into a mess. Other professors are good tempered and well educated, and they are not as knowledgeable as you, but you have all heard of my name, right? I'm different. You are. What is it? The hero who defeated Voldemort? That's what you said. I never admitted that I was a hero. I only admitted that I did defeat him. The two officials hesitated to speak. They have no control over this kind of thing. Alexis didn't want to delay any longer, so she stood up and said, in view of the fact that this exam question is too dangerous, after discussion we decided to adjust it and ask you to stay close to Buckbeak. Alexis changed the question to something as close to Buckbeak as possible. Then he specifically announced, Gemma Farley's results are invalid, and she will retake the exam. Gemma Farley looked at Alexis gratefully. Pinello Crevat. Alexis, read out the next candidate's name. The prefect of Ravenclaw stood up and slowly approached Buckbeak. The topic he changed was still dangerous, but because the requirement to pet Buckbeak was removed, even if Buckbeak was angered and acted aggressively, he would still have time to save the students. As for Buckbeak, he could only apologize and let Hagrid feed him more of his favorite food afterwards. What happened next was pretty much what Alexis expected. Every time the test takers tried to get closer to Buckbeak in order to get as good a score as possible, and each time they would anger Buckbeak and act aggressively, Alexis had to save people from Buckbeak's hooves and mouth again and again. Hagrid could only hold Buckbeak with a grimace and comfort him over and over again, and then cast a resentful look at Alexis. When the last candidate finished the exam, everyone breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, there was no accident. Chapter 196, The Ordinary Wizard Level Examination ends. On Wednesday, astronomy, divination, and arithmetic were tested together, followed by the long and boring history of magic. Alexis didn't really like the history of magic when he was in school, but he had already taught himself the history of magic, and his bedtime story was the history of magic. After the history of magic exam, it's time for Muggle studies. Unlike other subjects, Muggle studies courses, like history of magic, usually only have written exams. But it is said that Muggle studies has added practical exams this year, which makes Alexis feel very novel. After the Muggle studies exam, all ordinary wizarding level exams will come to an end. On Friday, Muggle studies exams begin. At noon, as expected, the little wizard started complaining in the restaurant. Muggle studies has always been the least popular elective course. Even if there are students taking this course, very few are willing to listen carefully. Some young wizards from Muggle families have lived in the Muggle world themselves, and know the Muggle world very well. According to them, the Muggle studies textbooks can be picked out as thick as a potions textbook. Errors and omissions. In the afternoon, Alexis saw what a Muggle studies practical examination was. Under the incredulous gazes of everyone, two officials from the examination administration took out a series of cars and placed them on the spot one after another. There are bicycles, motorcycles, cars, and even trucks. Then Professor Caridi Bibaji read out the exam requirements. The test is very simple. Candidates are required to drive a car. Those who drive bicycles will be rated as pass. Those who drive motorcycles will be rated as good. Those who drive cars will be rated as excellent. And those who drive trucks will be rated O+. After reading Professor Bubergy stepped back with an expression on his face that he had eaten a dead fly. If it were Alexis, he would have the same expression. As the teacher who knows the most about the Muggle world, Professor Bubergy receives constant complaints from parents every school year. Parents thought she was poisoning their children's minds. This wave of complaints reached its peak after she stated that Muggles are no different from wizards. In Alexis Speaker, Professor Bubergy is a peaceful and quiet person. She loves peace. She has published articles promoting racial equality in the Daily Prophet many times and has been selected by the Daily Prophet. Ridiculed as maybe she is an undercover agent sent by the Muggles, she is a traitor. She should really be allowed to stay on the stake too. Every year she receives all kinds of insults and attacks. But this did not defeat her. She still tenaciously took Muggle studies courses, preached peace and equality, and firmly believed that Muggles are no different from wizards. Alexis admired her very much. If it were him, he would have rushed into the homes of those parents who dared to insult and complain about him, hang them up and beat them. Let's talk about the practical exams in Muggle studies. Alexis has been in the Muggle world for more than 10 years. He knows that even Muggles cannot guarantee that they can drive, and in the Muggle world, you have to learn how to drive cars and trucks. He quickly thought that this was probably another question asked by the Cerebral Palsy Examination Administration official. Exams will start soon. As Alexis expected, the candidates' scores were disastrous. Only a few people can drive a motorcycle for a distance of more than 10 meters, and at least 1/3 of the candidates cannot even ride a bicycle. As for the car and truck, no one has started yet. They can't even light a fire. Alexis watched for a while, and only one Ravenclaw student opened the door and sat in the cab, which was considered a correct operation point. Other candidates didn't even know where to sit. This is a farce. The little wizards who were watching couldn't help it anymore. They burst into laughter, and then some little wizards from Muggle families began to remind them loudly. Open the cab door. Valley, sit in. Idiot. You're not sitting on the hood, you're sitting in the driver's seat. Oh my god. That's the co-pilot. The driver's seat is on the other side. The other side. No. What you're doing is wrong. Well, you might as well give up. Then there was another burst of laughter. The examinee jumped off the roof of the car with a red face and walked towards the motorcycle. This time he successfully started the motorcycle and drove a waypoint he had been observing carefully for a while before, and it was not difficult to learn and sell now. One after another, the candidates made a fool of themselves, and the little wizards who were watching laughed loudly, and then continued to happily instruct the candidates on how to drive the car. But unfortunately, until the last candidate finished the exam, no one succeeded in challenging the car. The closest candidate only succeeded in starting the ignition, and then he was at a loss when faced with the whining engine. He almost pulled out his wand and fired an Abaddon at the car. As the last candidate got off the bicycle, the practical examination of Muggle studies ended, and the 2-week ordinary wizarding level examination also came to an end. The candidates breathed a sigh of relief and then cheered together. Their exams are over, and what awaits them will be a 3-month vacation. The young wizards who were watching also cheered twice, and then they realized that the ordinary wizard level examination was over, and it was their turn next. So the cheers of the little wizards who were watching immediately turned into howls, and then they dispersed with a huff and a puff, and hurried back to seize the time to review. The ordinary wizarding level examination was over, and Dumbledore did not show up during the whole process. I don't know how he stayed in the principal's office for 2 consecutive weeks. 2 officials from the examination authority offered to take their leave, but only a few accepted. The professors at Hogwarts didn't look good on them, because the questions they brought made the ordinary wizarding exams messy. Mr. Alexis, seeing the only person who came out to see him off, the 2 officials were so moved that they almost cried. You misunderstood. Alexis waved her hands, her face calm. You haven't said yet who came up with these questions. Also, what is the name of the person in charge of the examination administration? The 2 officials, who were almost moved to tears, looked at each other with embarrassment. If you don't tell me this kind of thing, I can easily find out about it. If you tell me, I will remember it. Alexis added fuel to the fire. The new head of the examinations authority is called Umbridge. Darl's Umbridge, Mr. Alexis. The official on the left gritted his teeth and said, "Fine, thanks. You can come to me if you have anything." Alexis watched the two officials leave. Umbridge? How did that pink old woman become the head of the examination administration? If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 197, Vacation. The 2 days of the weekend passed quickly, and on Monday, the final exams for the little wizards came. This school year, Harry and other first-year students have taken 8 courses: herbology, potions, charms, transfiguration, flying, defense against the dark arts, astronomy, and pharmacy. According to the requirements, these 8 courses all will be assessed. For Harry, the most difficult thing was potions, and the easiest thing was flying lessons. In flying lessons, he could almost circle the Quidditch pitch with his eyes closed, then do somersaults in the air and land safely. Final exams are torture for students, and they are no less grueling for teachers. Alexis Pharmacy can be taken by all grades from grades 1 to 7. Although the number of choices for grades 6 and 7 dropped sharply, he had to combine the 6th and 7th grades with the 5th grade. In this way, there are still 5 grade level courses. In other words, he needs to come up with 5 sets of test questions and preside over 5 exams. This was just his pharmacy exam. Professor Sylvanus Kettleburn is still recovering from his injury, and Alexis will be responsible for the final exam on care of magical creatures. Alexis walked into the classroom on Monday, and the students in the classroom let out a lament. They still remember the legendary perverted quiz in the pharmacy class. "What's going on? Everyone's looking sad," Alexis asked with a smile as she stood on the podium. The 5th grade students had left the campus after taking the ordinary wizarding level examination. Even though only students of the same grade had left, Alexis still felt that the classroom was quite empty. At this time, he was facing 4th grade students. Pharmacy in the 1st to 3rd grade classes has 2 classes per week, and each class is a large class. However, starting from the 4th grade, there is only 1 class per week, and it is also a small class. The entire set of pharmacy textbooks was written by Alexis himself. The 1st volume to the 7th volume are closely linked. It is impossible to cover the knowledge points of several volumes in just 1 hour of class per week. Therefore, Alexis already made the distinction when she started teaching her students. Classes in the 4th and 5th grades focus more on concepts and thoughts, but there are not many main knowledge points. This way of teaching poses a big problem for the final exam of this course. The candidates were panic-stricken. Every page they opened in any textbook felt strange. Alexis, as the teacher, was also at a loss when setting the questions. This exam is an open book exam. Alexis waved her wand, and the test papers floated out one by one, and landed on the desks of the little wizards. You can look up the answers in the textbook, so the exam time is only 1 hour. Okay, the exam begins. In the end, Alexis had no choice but to do this. When Alexis announced the exam rules, the candidates breathed a sigh of relief. It's good for them to check the textbook. After the 4th grade exams were over, Alexis presided over another exam on care of magical creatures in the afternoon, and the first day of final exams at Hogwarts passed just like that. Early on Tuesday morning, Alexis walked into the classroom again holding the test papers. Put away the textbooks. This time it's 3rd grade. Alexis was not so polite to 3rd grade students who had 2 large classes a week. Close to book reading was the basic operation. Alexis had great expectations for them, who were about to enter 4th grade, and whose class hours had been significantly reduced. He wanted to cram 7 volumes of content into their little heads. It can be said that 3rd grade is the most harsh grade that Alexis treats. For 3rd year students, Alexis' potions class is no less terrifying than Snape's potions class. 2 hours later, Alexis sent away the 3rd grade students and ushered in the 2nd grade. In the afternoon, 1st year candidates walked into the examination room tremblingly. For this group of freshmen, the 2 days of final exams were a bit confusing. Alexis stood on the podium and stared silently at the little wizards below. Slowly, the classroom became quiet. This time is also a test for him. He has to take both the first year pharmacy exam and the third year care of magical creatures exam at the same time. As you may have heard, I also have to take care of magical creatures exam next door. Alexis said as he handed out test papers. Go. But you'd better not make any small moves. This set of test papers has been specially treated with a curse to prevent cheating. Don't think you can cheat while I'm not around. That's impossible. After hearing these words, some little wizards quickly lowered their heads and started to answer the questions. Some curled their lips secretly with a look of disdain, and some looked up at Alexis in confusion, not understanding what Alexis meant yet. What is he talking about? Mr. Longbottom, are there any questions? The little fat man belongs to the last category, so he was singled out by Alexis. The little fat man was frightened and quickly shook his head. Very good. Alexis nodded. Then let's start answering the questions. The exam will take 1.5 hours. When the time is up, you will not be able to answer a word on the test paper. So, pay attention to the time. Alexis paused in the classroom for a moment, then turned and left, going next door to hand out test papers. The same thing was said again. The third year candidates were obviously more knowledgeable. They had no other reaction and just answered the questions honestly. Alexis' reputation as a student who dared to cheat on the ordinary wizard level exam and successfully obtained A grades in all subjects has actually been spread among some students. The debate over whether he cheated or not has not stopped. But in fact he did cheat. And because of this, he is well aware of the loopholes in the so-called anti-cheating curse, and he is even more aware of the cheating methods of many students in DU. This doesn't matter to most students, but for a small number of students who try to cheat, it's a nightmare. Cheating in front of a teacher who knows how to cheat better than you, and whose cheating methods are better than yours, unless you don't want to live anymore. After continuously glaring at 4 or 5 little wizards who tried to cheat with their death stares, the candidates all gave up their thoughts of cheating and became quiet. Alexis nodded with satisfaction and came to Ron, who was sitting in the first row. Mr. Weasley was scratching his head at the last 2 questions. Alexis was true to her word, and the last 2 questions were all practical application questions. Mr. Weasley grabbed the quill and muttered something in his mouth, but he didn't write a word for a long time. Alexis shook her head. Mr. Weasley had failed the class. His 2 brothers, Fred and George, performed very well in the morning. Not only did they complete the questions perfectly, they even had time to check them again. As far as Alexis was concerned, the twins were at least a no. Alexis walked up to Harry again. Harry was struggling with the first practical application question. Although he wrote 2 lines, it seemed that his situation was not much like Mr. Weasley's. Miss Granger next to him had already finished answering the questions. The paper was neat and in a standardized format. The 2 moderately difficult practical application questions did not stump this academic master. This is to be expected. On the contrary, it was Draco Malfoy, the eldest son. This man actually stumbled and answered the first practical application question, which made Alexis look at him with admiration. Time passed slowly, and an hour and a half passed by quickly. When the time was up, all the candidates stopped answering the questions, because they found that no matter how hard they tried, the quills could not leave a trace on the test paper. Okay, it's time. Alexis stood on the podium and clapped her hands, announcing that the exam was over. This is your last subject. Yes, this is their last subject. After taking this subject, the nearly 3-month vacation time has officially arrived. Chapter 198. New Teacher of Protecting Magical Creatures. In the early morning, Alexis had breakfast and walked around the empty campus. According to regulations, Hogwarts does not allow students to stay on campus during holidays. Therefore, there is no student on the Hogwarts campus at this time except teachers. Ron had gone home yesterday, and Hermione also took the Hogwarts Express back to London. On the night after the potion exam, Harry was picked up by Black. It is said that they have a perfect holiday travel plan, the kind that doesn't treat Alexis and Lupin. Master Malfoy also left school yesterday afternoon, and Narcissa personally came to pick him up. Lucius was busy with Malfoy family business. Both the Muggle world and the Wizarding world have been very quiet recently. Nothing happened, and even the cleanup operation is about to come to an end. Their investigation of the mastermind behind the scenes had no clue for the time being, so Lucius simply continued to expand the family business. Alexis was wandering around campus and ran into Hagrid. Hagrid greeted Alexis with a slap as big as a cat tail fan from a distance. "Hi Alexis. Great news for you. I'm going to be a teacher," Hagrid shouted excitedly to Alexis. Then, without waiting for Alexis to ask questions, he went on his own and told the reasons for the matter. Professor Sylvanus Kettleburn's injury this time was relatively serious. After more than half a month of continuous treatment, he is now recovering. Perhaps because he feels that he is really old, this reckless old professor offered to he resigned and recommended Hagrid to Dumbledore. In his words, "Hagrid, like me, has a deep love for magical animals. He is the most suitable candidate." According to Hagrid, Dumbledore had already approved the resignation of Professor Sylvanus Kettleburn. Calling Hagrid this time was probably to prepare him to teach the course care of magical creatures. "What exactly did you encounter in the Forbidden Forest?" Alexis asked curiously as she walked with Hagrid to the main building. "Spiders. And lots of other cuties." Hagrid gestured. "Fions said they encountered a werewolf attack. You know how much Fions hates werewolves. But we didn't see werewolves. We just heard Fions mention it. He was very sure that there were werewolves in the Forbidden Forest. And he was very angry about this. As a centaur who prefers to be classified as an animal in order, not to complicit with werewolves, seeing a werewolf is simply more exciting than seeing the enemy who killed his father." Of course, Alexis knew how much the centaur tribe hated werewolves. He even suspected that, because of their long-term hatred, the centaur tribe had evolved organs that could distinguish werewolves from ordinary people, such as being able to smell werewolves. Otherwise, when they entered the Forbidden Forest for the first time, Fions and the others would not have recognized Lupin as a werewolf at a glance, and chased them angrily and almost ran through the entire Forbidden Forest. Although the Centaur's tribe lived in the Forbidden Forest, they were not affiliated with Hogwarts. No one would naively think that, if the Centaur's tribe resources were classified under the animal category, they would really be animals. If anyone dares to think so, the Centaur's tribe will definitely let them know what the anger of the Centaurs is. The relationship between the Centaur's tribe and Hogwarts is more like that of tenants and landlords. They just stay in the Forbidden Forest and do not belong to Hogwarts. "So there are really werewolves in the Forbidden Forest?" Alexis asked in surprise. One of the room fees that the horse tribe needs to pay when staying in the Forbidden Forest is to maintain the Forbidden Forest. After so many years of operation, the horse tribe can be said to know the Forbidden Forest well. According to the Centaur's hatred of werewolves, it was impossible for werewolves to appear in the Forbidden Forest. Every time they sneaked into the Forbidden Forest, when they were students, if they took Lupin with them, they had to walk carefully around the Centaur tribe. Even a werewolf like Lupin, who had never done anything bad, would be treated like this. It can be imagined how closely the Centaurs were guarding against werewolves. Hagrid grinned. He was currently in the joy of being a teacher on the care of magical creatures course, and had no time to care about anything else. Alexis looked back out the window, thoughtfully. The Forbidden Forest is lush and green in June, and the dark green and black Forbidden Forest looks deep and mysterious. The two came to the 8th floor, and entered the principal's office through the gargoyle's password. As Hagrid expected, Dumbledore asked Hagrid if he would be willing to be the care of magical creatures teacher. "Yes, of course I would." Hagrid's face flushed with excitement, and his high voice made the portraits on the wall rumble. "Big man, shut up." Phineas wandered off somewhere, and was covered in thatch. He was picking the thatch on his body when he heard Hagrid yelling and shouting dissatisfied. Alexis glared at Phineas disapprovingly. Phineas laughed immediately. "Isn't this our great hero, Mr. Alexis Felix, who defeated the Dark Lord? It's such an honor to meet you." It was obviously a compliment, but when it came out of Phineas's mouth, there was always a strange feeling. Alexis ignored him and hugged Hagrid to congratulate him. Hagrid was dancing with excitement at this time, like a child who received his favorite Christmas gift, laughing loudly, and slapped Alexis on the back with his big palm, almost knocking Alexis off his back. "Get over it. Congratulations, Hagrid." Alexis grimaced in pain and struggled to move back. Dumbledore on the side smiled and narrowed his eyes without stopping. After a while, Hagrid's emotions calmed down a little and he turned his target to Dumbledore. Okay, Hagrid, maybe you should get ready. Although the vacation is still very long, you also need to get familiar with it. Dumbledore stepped back and spoke to divert Hagrid's attention. Alex, how about you and Hagrid complete the orientation work for the new semester together? Alexis nodded and asked, I heard that werewolves appeared in the Forbidden Forest. Do you know? Dumbledore shook his head and slowly sat back in his chair. When did this happen? You see, from the beginning of the ordinary wizard level examination to now, everyone is very busy, and I haven't had time to pay attention to the matters in the Forbidden Forest. Alexis didn't answer immediately. He organized his words before speaking. Professor Sylvanus Kettleburn was attacked and injured by a werewolf when he went to see the fire dragon ball, and Dumbledore could not let Dumbledore know that Hagrid had raised a fire dragon. When I went to visit Professor Sylvanus Kettleburn, he mentioned that he was attacked in the Forbidden Forest. This kind of thing should not have happened. Fiennes and the others only maintained the Forbidden Forest safety. But I heard that Fiennes and the others went after werewolves that day, which led to Professor Sylvanus Kettleburn being attacked. Chapter 199, Busy Holidays. If there really were werewolves in the Forbidden Forest, this would be a more serious issue. Hogwarts has always had a tradition of students trespassing into the Forbidden Forest. Although the school rules clearly prohibit students from entering and exiting the Forbidden Forest, when children of this age are proud to violate the rules, how can they obey the school rules and obey them? Not to mention that Alexis had intentionally or unintentionally encouraged people to enter and leave the Forbidden Forest. If there are really werewolves in the Forbidden Forest, once the students happen to enter the Forbidden Forest during the full moon, they are very likely to be attacked by werewolves. Even if this group of werewolves are kind, like Lupin, who have never done evil, they will still attack students under the full moon. After all, even a quiet man like Lupin attacks humans during the full moon. Once a student is attacked by a werewolf, things will become very serious. Tell me what you think. Dumbledore frowned slightly and looked at Alexis. There were only two of them in the room at this time, and the big Hagrid had already happily ran away to prepare for his upcoming career as a teacher. I think we should cooperate with Fiennes to catch the werewolf. Dumbledore looked at Alexis in surprise and did not speak immediately. In his impression, because of Lupin's existence, Alexis always had great sympathy for the werewolves as a group and was vaguely partial. In Alexis's previous understanding, werewolves were in an absolutely disadvantaged position. They were oppressed and discriminated against all year round. They did many jobs that even house elves were unwilling to do, but they had no food to eat and had to leave on the road to crime. In a sense, Dumbledore believed that Alexis's previous thoughts were very prejudiced against the wizarding community. Why did it change this time? Dumbledore then thought of the Yorkshire massacre. That tragedy almost shocked the whole world, and Alexis was a witness. He witnessed with his own eyes how brutal the werewolves became under the full moon, how they tore living people into pieces. Perhaps it was the aftermath of the Yorkshire tragedy. Hagrid is very familiar with the Forbidden Forest. He has always had a good relationship with Fiennes, and is also close to the entire Centaurs tribe. It is perfect for him to be in charge, Alexis said. To catch the werewolf and ensure that Kyukiu is not exposed, only insiders like him or Hagrid can be responsible for this matter, and he had other plans, so this matter could only fall on Hagrid. Although Alexis had never seen Hagrid fight with anyone, the teacher at Hogwarts was not far away. Even if he encountered any problems that he could not solve, he could still call here for help. What are you going to do? Dumbledore looked at Alexis in surprise and asked. According to their agreement a year ago, Alexis must come to Hogwarts to serve, and in exchange, he will give Alexis normal vacation time. But Dumbledore was clearly uneasy about Alexis' holiday time. Darlor's Umbridge becomes head of the examinations authority. I'm going to ask Rufus what's going on. The ordinary wizarding level examination has just passed. As you can see, that disgusting old woman will only make a mess. If she continues to be the head of the examination authority, she will destroy Hogwarts. According to our agreement, you can't interfere with my vacation. Dumbledore was about to say something, but Alexis interrupted him in time. "It's vacation time now," Alexis emphasized. "Okay," said Dumbledore. "Well, Alex, have a nice holiday." Alexis nodded with satisfaction, waved to Dumbledore, stood up and left the principal's office. His job isn't easy this holiday season. Unlike before, he could wander around and enjoy leisurely vacation time. He had to get rid of the annoying Darlor's Umbridge. His research had hit a bottleneck, and he also needed to go to the Muggle world for inspiration. For his research, Alexis was extremely convinced that no one in the wizarding world could help him. Not Dumbledore, not Snape. The only thing that might help is research from the Muggle world. In addition, there was the person behind the scenes that Lucius said. Now he was wondering if Lucius was deceiving him. The master behind the scenes always acted out of common sense and broke his and Lucius' predictions time and time again, giving him a headache. This is a first-rate event. This is different from Voldemort. Alexis almost knows everything about Voldemort. He is not anxious at all to deal with Voldemort. He has a complete set of plans. Although Voldemort did not play out the way he expected in the end, but in the end it didn't exceed his expectations. Alexis knew nothing about this mastermind, and he had broken common sense time and time again. In other words, he and Lucius had never predicted the behavior of the mastermind. This made him a little uneasy. As for Claire, I heard that Claire has almost gathered the remnants of Grindelwald and has been urging him to come over and meet with everyone recently. The Byron Hotel is just a temporary place to stay. When there are only Claire, Bayer and the others, it is relatively inconspicuous. Once there are more people, it is easy to attract attention. He also had to find a new place for this group of people to stay. After Lin finally finished, Alexis found that he could finish these things in more than 2 months, which was already pretty good. As for time, that might just be wishful thinking. Speaking of Claire, Alexis thought of the burly man Bayer. He hesitated for a moment at the door of the principal's office, hesitating whether to mention it to Dumbledore. He was very optimistic about Bayer and wanted him to enter Hogwarts and conduct research with him. But thinking of Dumbledore's vigilance towards the remnants of Grindelwald, Alexis could only give up. He went directly to the kitchen. Almost all house elves at Hogwarts work in the kitchen. They provide food for all teachers and students, help students carry luggage and packages into their dormitories, and clean the castle. But almost no one has ever seen them cleaning the castle. Even the students who like to go out at night have never met the house elves who clean the castle. They can always keep the castle clean and tidy without being noticed. This once made Alexis very curious. He even stayed at the door of the kitchen all night, preparing to observe when the house elves would come out to clean the castle. Unfortunately, all he got for doing this was continuous naps in class and a scolding from Professor McGonagall. Apart from that, he still failed to observe the working hours of the house elves. They are like the snail girls in fairy tales. Alexis came to the kitchen and asked the house elves to help take care of the animals in the laboratory. This was not the first time he had done this, so he did not need to be carefully instructed on how to take care of them. After receiving a positive reply, Alexis turned and left. Chapter 200, Shattering Alexis 3 Views. London. It rains heavily in London in June, and the leaden sky is very depressing. Alexis came to the familiar door of the Minister of Magic's office, opened the door, and then backed out. He checked the sign on the door repeatedly to confirm that he had not gone wrong, and then reluctantly walked into the office. There was a man lying on the table facing the door. Most of his dark brown hair had turned grey, and the exposed half of his forehead was covered with deep wrinkles. His unruffled face was buried in his arms, showing this majestic old lion. It seems a little less imposing. As if hearing Alexis' footsteps, Rufus moved and then raised his head. Because he was not wearing glasses, his eyes were briefly confused and then recovered. "Alexis, my old friend. Sit down." The fatigue on his face disappeared in just a moment. Rufus grabbed his glasses and put them on, greeting him warmly. Alexis took a deep look at Rufus. He originally came to call the enemy to task, but after seeing Rufus's appearance, he didn't know what to say for a while. Regarding the cleaning operation, Alexis and Lucius had been vigilant since learning about it in March, suspecting that there was some conspiracy involved, but Rufus, the old lion, had persisted from April until now. Alexis believed that Rufus was going all out to fight criminals. He had worked with Rufus for a while. Rufus was the kind of tough guy who couldn't get rid of the sand in his eyes. Wizards have zero tolerance. Rufus definitely put a lot of effort into this cleanup operation. I heard that Hogwarts is on holiday? Rufus asked Alexis, while sitting behind the table as he handed Alexis a cup of black tea. Yes. Alexis put the teacup aside, organized some conversation and asked, "Why don't you see your secretary?" Rufus was stunned for a moment, then shook his head and laughed. "Do you mean Dolores Umbridge?" He opened the drawer, pulled out an invitation, and handed it to Alexis. "Just in time. I invite you to my wedding." Alexis took the invitation in a daze, and opened it with a dazed look on his face. The two beautiful cursive names on it made his brain stop working completely. Rufus Scrimgeour and Dolores Umbridge. Rufus on the other side is still talking. "I've been so busy during this period that I almost forgot the invitation I gave you. If you hadn't come over, I would have forgotten it. My dear old friend, please do come." No. It took a while for Alexis to react. He stood up suddenly, holding the invitation tightly in his hand, and said loudly, "What?" I say. Alexis and Rufus looked at each other, seeing the confusion on his face, but couldn't say the next words. What does other people's weddings have to do with him? Alexis was stunned for only a moment, then strode around the table, threw away the invitation, grabbed Rufus's chin, and opened Rufus's eyelids with the other hand, and started to look through it. "Have you had any unusual reactions recently?" Alexis looked over it again and again. Drowsiness? Dizziness? Memory lag? Slow reaction? Or daze? Rufus took Alexis' hand away, shook his head and smiled. "I know what you're thinking, Alexis. You think Umbridge gave me a love potion, don't you?" Alexis said nothing. "Do you think this is possible?" Rufus slowly stopped smiling. "Use a love potion on me? Alexis, you underestimate me. I really underestimated you for actually falling in love with that old woman Umbridge." Alexis cursed in her mind. The most likely scenario he could think of was that, in order to climb up, Umbridge climbed into Rufus' bed and used a love potion on Rufus to make Rufus obsessed with her. Otherwise, how could we explain that Rufus, an old lion, would actually fall in love with Umbridge and also want to get married? When Alexis saw the name on the invitation, she was almost shocked by the news. April Fool's Day has been over for more than 2 months. "It's not like that, Alexis." Rufus is still explaining that Alexis is a rare friend who can be recognized by Rufus. He wants to get blessings from Alexis, not suspicion and confusion. "What kind?" Alexis took a half step back and stared at Rufus suspiciously. "It's not what you think. She used the love potion to control me." "That's impossible, Alexis. I've been in the aura department for so many years. No one can control me unless I'm willing. Perhaps in your opinion, Umbridge behaves strangely, behaves meanly, and is vain. She doesn't even want to mention her family, Alexis. That's how you see her, right?" Alexis snorted and thought, "It's good that you know. But she also has a cute side. She likes cats, but because of her busy work schedule, she can only collect decorative plates of playing cats to put in the office. She likes pink and lace decorations. Maybe you think it's bad behavior at our age to like these things, but I see another side of her heart." "Which side?" Alexis lowered the corners of her mouth, revealing a sly smile. "She misses her youth." Rufus stood up, spread his arms, and said, "No matter what you think of her, there is a young girl living inside her, and that is who she has been in her dreams since she was a child." The corners of Alexis' mouth pulled down even more. "She is still a young girl, living like this vicious old witch." Alexis shook his head. He felt that Rufus was hopeless, and he didn't know how many doses of love potion Umbridge had given him to make him so obsessed. I know you don't believe it's because of our love." Rufus could see Alexis's distrust. He was a little agitated, his face turned red, and he was waving his arms widely. Alexis had a very strange feeling when the word love came out of the mouth of Rufus, a tough old lion point in his impression. Rufus was a cold hardliner who treated criminals without mercy, was upright and cared about his subordinates. Alexis had heard many versions of Rufus from Christie, some of which she and her colleagues had concocted privately, but even Christie, that woman, did not dare to concoct a love-minded Rufus. And this Rufus, the love-minded Rufus, is standing in front of Alexis now. He's emotional, he's obsessed with love. Alexis felt that the world was beginning to become absurd. Alexis, my dear friend. Rufus's speech was about to come to an end, and he looked at fracking Alexis with disappointed eyes. I originally hoped to get a blessing from you. Yeah, Alexis nodded, digging around in his arms. You said you weren't addicted to the drug, right? He took out a small bottle, uncorked it and handed it over. The light liquid inside was only about a small mouthful. Drink it. Alexis said this is the antidote to infatuation drugs. It can solve most of the infatuation drugs on the market and restore your mind to clarity. Since you said you two are true love, then drink it. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.